Kasi walang trabaho
The
eh.
Senate in the second regular session of the 18th Congress is hereby called to order. Senator Ronald Bato de la Rosa will lead the chamber in prayer.
Let us bow our heads and put ourselves in the presence of the Lord. Almighty God, as we start another Senate session, we praise and thank you for this opportunity to continue serving the Filipino nation. We ask your divine guidance as we put our minds together in seeking more and better ways to address the challenges that our countrymen continue to face, especially in the midst of this pandemic that is ravaging our nation and the rest of the world. We seek your divine wisdom and enlightenment as we discuss and deliberate issues and craft legislations that promote only the best interest and provide the best life for every Filipino. And we ask your divine inspiration as we strive to always be at our best and prove worthy of our countrymen's trust and confidence as their legislators and servants. Lord, we humbly beseech you to bless and free our nation from this terrible pandemic and help us heal and return to normalcy. Bless this august chamber and all of us, your servants. Let solidarity, justice, and love of country rule our hearts and minds as we render our duties today and through all the days of our service. Lord, be at the center of all our endeavors as we offer all this for your greater glory. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. The Secretary will please call the roll.
Roll call of members to Honorable Senators Angara, Hinay,
Present.
Cayetano,
Present.
De Lima, De La Rosa, Drilon,
Present.
Gatchalian, Go,
Present, perfect pa.
Gordon, Ontiveros, Lacson, Lapid,
Present.
Marcos, Yao,
Present.
Pangilinan,
Present. Present.
Pimentel III, Poe,
Present.
Recto,
Present.
Revilla Jr.,
Present.
Lentino, Villanueva, Villar,
Present.
Zubiri,
Present. Present.
Senate President Soto III is present.
With 7 senators physically present and 14 senators virtually present, for a total of 21, the chair declares the presence of a quorum.
Mr. President,
Senator Pimentel.
can you include the just-in-time presence of this representation?
Sama ba siya? There are 22 22 senators present, including
Thank you, sir.
Senator Pimentel. Majority Leader.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that we dispense with the reading of the journal of the 47th session, Monday, February 15, 2021, and consider the same as approved. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Chair hears none. The journal is approved.
Mr. President, I move that we proceed with the reference of business.
Secretary will proceed with the reference of business.
Reference of business, messages from the House of Representatives, letter from the House of Representatives informing the Senate that on 15 February 2021, it passed the following House bills in which it requests the concurrence of the Senate. House number 7808, an act amending sections 35, 37, 38, 39, and 40 of Republic Act number 4566, otherwise known as the Contractor's License Law, modifying the contractor's license renewal process, increasing fees, and imposing penalties for violations thereof.
Referred to the Committee on Trade.
House number 8552, an act granting Allied Broadcasting Center Incorporated a franchise to construct, install, operate, and maintain radio and television broadcasting stations in the Philippines.
Referred to the Committee on Public Services.
House number 8553, an act granting Palawan Broadcasting Corporation a franchise to construct, install, operate, and maintain radio and television broadcasting stations in the Philippines.
To the Committee on Public Services.
House number 8554, an act granting St. Jude Tadeus Institute of Technology Incorporated a franchise to construct, operate, and maintain radio and television stations in the Philippines of Surigao del Norte and other areas in the Philippines.
To the Committee on Public Services.
And House number 8556, an act renewing for another 25 years the franchise granted to Baycoms Broadcasting Corporation under Republic Act number 8718 entitled an act granting the Baycoms Broadcasting Corporation a franchise to construct, install, establish, operate, and maintain radio and television stations in the Philippines.
To the Committee on Public Services.
Letter from the House of Representatives informing the Senate that on 16 February 2021, it passed the following House bills in which it requests the concurrence of the Senate. House number 8631, an act granting Philippine citizenship to Bienvenido Morejon Marañon.
To the Committee on Justice.
House number 8632, an act granting Philippine citizenship to Kaku Ong Frank Williams Kwame.
To the Committee on Justice.
House number 8664, an act providing for the reapportionment of the province of Bataan into 3 legislative districts.
To the Committees on Local Government and Electoral Reforms.
And House number 5421, an act declaring a parcel of land of the public domain located in barangays Bunog, Iraan, Punta Baja, Kampong Ulay, and Ransang of the municipality of Jose P. Rizal, province of Palawan, as agricultural land open to disposition for agricultural, commercial, residential, industrial, and other productive purposes.
To the Committee on Environment. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I have to defer the approval of yesterday's journal as it's still being prepared. So I move, Mr. President, that we defer the approval of the journal of the 48th session, Tuesday, February 16, 2021, as it's still being prepared to a later hour, Mr. President.
All right. Hearing no objection, the approval of the said journal is deferred.
Mr. President, we have with us in the gallery, just like to make that announcement, Secretary Charlie Galvez of the IATF, as well as Secretary Duque of the DOH. And they're here to help us in the passage of this bill, first on the agenda, Mr. President. I move that we resume consideration of Senate Bill number 2057 under Committee Report number 185. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Chair hears none. Senate Bill 2057's consideration is in order.
Mr. President, may we recognize the sponsor, our distinguished senator from Aurora, Senator Sunny Angara, and to interpolate first in the line of the list, rather, is Senator Ralph Recto, our Senate President Pro Tem.
All right. The Chairman of the Committee on Finance, the gentleman from Aurora, is recognized, Senator Sunny Angara. And to interpolate, the President Pro Tempore, Senator Ralph Recto.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Majority Leader. Would the distinguished sponsor of this measure, which I support, be willing to accept a few questions just to clarify some of the points raised in this bill?
Most certainly, Mr. President, to our brilliant Senate President Pro Temp, the favorite of the seatmates and even bigger favorite of their wives.
Thank you very much for your kind words, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I just have a few questions. First, the purpose of the bill, as mentioned in the title, is to expedite the procurement and the administration of vaccines. may I know for the record, how will this bill expedite the procurement of the national government? Just the national government first, Mr. President.
There are a number of provisions, I think, which might help, Your Honor, Mr. President. The first is the indemnification fund. I think that's been a constant request or demand of the manufacturers. So there's a provision on that in the bill under consideration to indemnify those who may suffer related illnesses to the vaccine, Your Honor.
Okay. So, is there any other provision? Or is that the main part of this bill as far as expediting the procurement of the national government?
Your Honor, there's also the provision which exempts from the auditing code, which limits the amount of advance payment the government may make. Right now, it's a moving target. It was set at 15%. Under Bayanihan, it was set at 30%. And there is a draft circular, I think, at the Office of the President for 50% advance payment, Your Honor. But that will be superseded by this bill should we pass it at the soonest time, Your Honor. So that's another one that allows for advance
Just one
payment.
comment on this second issue.
Yes, Your Honor.
Isn't it correct to say that today the laws are sufficient as far as procurement by the national government is concerned? Because even the president can waive the 15%. Isn't it correct?
Yes, the president may in the case of the national government, but I think in the case of the local government, there is the local government
No, I
code which
understand
needs
that.
to be surmounted, Your Honor.
My question was only with regard to the national government, Mr.
Yes, Your
President.
Honor.
Okay, so I think there's no other provision here except maybe the indemnification. Now, the question is, why is it only now that the national government is telling us that apparently there is this requirement from the suppliers that we need to have a law on indemnification? Why only now? I understand that they've been talking to suppliers for the last how many months?
Why only now? Di dapat lo. Your Honor, I'm speaking to for those online. I apologize if there's a lag, but I'm trying to solicit the information from the head of the vaccines are Mr. President, and according to him, it was not put forth as a requirement in the early talks with the manufacturers.
Okay. In all these countries that these manufacturers have supplied the vaccines, do all of them have an indemnification law with regard to vaccines for COVID?
I was told, Your Honor, Mr. President, that not every country has a law, but every country that enters into the purchase of vaccines has that as part of the agreement. So not everyone has a law, but every country enters into that agreement, providing for indemnification, Your Honor.
Yes, I'm not complaining about this indemnification. I support it, Mr. President. I'm just trying to wonder why we have not been able to sign any contract, the national government. Okay? And apparently, if I read the papers, ang latest na binibintangan ay wala tayong indemnification law. Okay, that's all I'm trying to point out. Huh? And I don't see anything here in this bill that will hasten the procurement by the national government. Okay. Okay. Now, okay. Question. Has the local government been able to sign, has any local government been able to sign a perfected contract with a supplier, and have they paid a down payment already?
But this is dependent also sa law na.
The law on indemnification. Who would you know? Yes, Your Honor. I was told there are a number of contracts which have been signed by local governments.
Perfected. May down payment na rin.
No down payment yet, Your Honor, but they're also waiting for the passage of this law, Your Honor. And during the hearings last week, Governor Cuo was telling us that local government chief executives are afraid that without legal cover, which this measure provides, they may be open to lawsuits given the provisions of the local government code, the auditing code, Your Honor, Mr. President.
And I'm with you with regard to the purpose of doing this for local government units, Mr. President. Ulitin
Thank you,
ko
Your
lang,
Honor.
so the local government has signed contracts. The only problem is wala pa silang down payment. What about the private sector, Mr. President? Ang private sector ba may perfected contract na rin?
Meron na po daw for 6 million doses, Your Honor.
Okay. And they have a perfected contract and may down payment na yung private sector. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, I was would I kindly request the gentleman to repeat the question, Your Honor?
Yes.
Apologize.
Okay. The private sector, have they perfected contracts with suppliers already? And have they paid a down payment already?
Yes, Your Honor. There's been a down payment made by the private sector.
And what, 50% on down payment?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. What about the national government? Ang national government ba meron ng perfected contract?
Wala pa ho daw.
Wala pa. Nauna yung private sector.
Opo. Opo,
Nauna
Mr.
yung
President.
local government unit.
Yung sa local government unit, it is a tripartite agreement.
Yeah, including the private sector sa tripartite agreement, isn't it?
Yes, Your Honor. Nauna ho sila.
Okay. So ang private sector may perfected contract, may down payment. Ang
Yes,
local
opo.
government may perfected contract pero wala pang down payment.
Correct, Your
Ang
Honor.
national government walang perfected contract, walang down payment.
Tama po. Mas ang pinakasigurista po yung national government.
Okay? And like I said earlier, nothing in this bill will make it faster for the national government to procure, isn't it? Now, if the private sector and the local government may perfected contract and the private sector may down payment already, kahit wala pa yung indemnification. So hindi dahilan yung indemnification, isn't it?
I was told by the vaccine czar, Mr. President, that with respect to the COVAX purchase, that seems to be the sticky point, yung indemnification.
Okay.
talaga.
Only for the COVAX purchase.
Also for Pfizer din daw, Mr. President, according to
Okay.
Secretary Galvez.
Okay. Now, question. Why is it that there are other countries na mas mahirap sa atin or at least their GDP is smaller than the Philippines at nauna na sila sa vaccination program? At tayo na huli.
I'm not too aware of what other countries are doing, Mr. President, but according to the vaccine czar, some were donations, and perhaps they ordered earlier or ahead of us, and perhaps
Correct.
they concluded.
That's the
Yes.
point. That is
Yes,
the
Doctor.
point. My understanding is that, let me give you an example, Singapore. Their per capita income is bigger than ours. But the size of our economy is bigger than Singapore.
Singapore is probably as big as Cebu, Your Honor, in terms of population.
In terms of,
But, yeah, I think they're definitely, when it comes to swift action, Singapore is one of the
that's all I'm
farthest,
talking
seeing,
about
Your
as
Honor.
an example. Okay? Because they started purchasing June and July of last year. They made the bet, they made the call. They bought Pfizer, Moderna, and one Chinese brand.
Yeah.
So they
I was told,
free
Your
vaccine.
Honor, yung Singapore nagbayad ng cash upfront, not just the 50% down payment,
Yes.
Your Honor.
Yes, that's right.
They're like Senator Gatchalian, Your Honor. He pays for everything upfront and in cash, Mr.
Mr.
President.
President, with the permission of the sponsor and Senator Recto, just an interjection very quickly on the Singapore purchase.
If the two gentlemen agree.
Of course, Mr.
So we
President.
agree, Mr. President.
Yes. Just for the information of our colleagues and particularly Senators Recto and Angara, I had the chance to speak with one of the higher officials of the Ministry of Health of Singapore, and they started doing their purchases April.
So even earlier than what I said of June, July.
It's correct that they started their purchases and negotiations and made purchases by May, Mr. President. For the record, this is the information relayed to us by a high-ranking official of the Ministry of Health of Singapore.
Yes. So it is the swiftness. Okay. So that is the point, no? Now I don't see, and that's why I started by asking how will any of this bill improve our ability to move faster? Okay. Okay. So let's set that aside, Mr. President. Now to go nitty-gritty naman on the bill itself, on certain sections, Mr. President. I just wanted to put those issues first out front and to put them into context, Mr. President. Now, with regard to Section 2, the Declaration of Policy, Mr. President, on paragraph A, and later on it will be found also in Section 3 with regard to procurement of vaccines, which is in the Declaration of Policy of A and B as well. It talks about source and on paragraph B, source and procure through DOH and NTF, either through themselves jointly or in cooperation with any national government agency or instrumentality. Now, I understand that the purpose of this measure is to allow the local government units and the private sector by law to purchase these vaccines. But here in this in the Declaration of Policy and found later on in Section 3, we're also talking about, just for clarification purposes, any national government agency or instrumentality. Wouldn't that be too broad? Is that the real intention, that any government agency or instrumentality of government can source and procure vaccines? What is meant by this, Mr. President?
So pwede through a government corporation. Well, that phrasing is just to give maximum flexibility to the government, Your Honor, since it is a national vaccination program. That is the usual definition of government. I think under the administrative code, it includes the national government, the agencies, as well as other instrumentalities, Your Honor.
So pwede bumili dito ang PITC?
In theory, yes, Your Honor.
In theory, pwede. Any department of the national government or any GOCC, pwede rin.
Yes, but they have to go through DOH and... Yes, Your Honor, but they have to go through DOH and NTF also.
Yeah. Is that what we really want? Hindi ba magiging... I mean, today, there are what? How many local government units are there? At least 1,500.
Well, if I may borrow a metaphor used by the good gentleman, the brilliant gentleman, often, we're just giving them the arrows. It doesn't mean that they will shoot all of them, Mr. President. No, I think in practice, they will only use one or two, and these are local governments and the national government acting through the vaccines are, Mr. President. But
yes, I understand.
I think just like in Bayanihan 1 and 2, we gave them maximum flexibility, Your Honor.
Yes. Just to put on the record, I'm not totally against this. I'm just seeking clarification. What is the intent?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. So in this case, we are saying that, yes, pwede all government agencies, the national government, any department, any instrumentality of government, pati barangay, pati GOCC, they can procure vaccines approved by the FDA subject to the DOH and the IATF.
Different theory pwede, pero practical na.
So, wouldn't there be a need to tighten it, or should we be more accommodating and more liberal and allow such a broad characteristic? Yes.
The gentleman raises a very good point, Your Honor. I think this also was discussed partly and during Bayanihan 1 and 2 discussions. And again, I would adopt the thinking, I would hope this is the gentleman's thinking, to give them as much ammunition as we can, Your Honor. But as a practical matter, in theory, the wording of the measure is wide enough or expansive enough to include barangays in the purchase. But as a practical matter, I am discussing here with the IATF, the NTF, and the DOH, and they will say they will not allow barangays to purchase. The smallest political unit probably to be allowed to purchase would be the municipalities, Your Honor.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for that response, Mr. President. And maybe at the appropriate time, we can take a look at this again, whether or not we leave it broad or we tighten it. Okay.
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you for that. I just wanted to see clarification on the intent, Mr. President. And I'm satisfied by the response of the sponsor of this bill, Mr. President.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Yes. Moving forward, Mr. President, how will it work in Section 3 here? No. In effect, what we are saying here is that, isn't it that the NTF will be the one solely responsible? We are authorizing the NTF to negotiate and approve all the terms on the procurement of vaccines. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor. That is provided in the measure in Section 3, as you pointed out.
Okay. So the question arises, no? I understand the purpose why. Okay? Why we want them to do it. Okay? The problem is, as we have established earlier, the private sector has perfected contracts already. Nag-down payment na. The NTF has not perfected a single contract at wala pa rin down payment.
Well, I think it needs pointing out, Your Honor,
Yes.
Mr. President, that even those perfected contracts were in conjunction with the NTF. So duman pa rin po sila.
But
Sa-
you know, how come they perfect?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
So you know, I'm just trying to, you know, I'm just taking this opportunity. Remember, we had a committee of the whole, no, last January on the vaccination program.
Yes, Your Honor.
And now that there is a bill in front of us, we are continuing the discussion now on our vaccination program. And we know right now na mas mabilis yung private sector. Maybe there's something that the private sector can teach the NTF on how to go about this.
Less limitations.
Di ba?
Yes, Your Honor. I think as in many things, mas mabilis to talaga ang private sector. Opo.
Yeah, but also the local government. Why is it that the local government has been able to perfect a contract and yet the national government has not been able to? Okay. My next question pala, Mr. President, is this. Isn't it correct that we've provided already in the budget, in the GAA, sufficient funding for the purpose of vaccines for all adult Filipinos 18 and above?
Yes, Your Honor. And I must put on record that it was on your initiative that we placed that, because much of that funding was not in the NEP or the National Expenditure Program. And we inserted it here in the Senate, Your Honor, at his honor's prodding.
Thank you for that. But the point is this. And in fact, during the testimony, during our committee of the whole hearings, that the Secretary Galvez said that we can be assured that we will have 148 million vaccines available within the year. Isn't that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Now, if that is correct, and isn't it correct that best case scenario, we would be able to vaccine or inoculate at least 50 to 70 million Filipinos. That there is enough for 70 million Filipinos in the national budget, which is the entire population of 18 and above.
Yes, Your Honor, that's correct. The funding is there, Your Honor.
Is there. Okay, so the question arises now. Kung kompleto na yung funding, why do you think that local government units want to purchase their own vaccine?
I think they may have a different priority from those in government. Maybe they feel they can do it quicker and faster, Your Honor, and perhaps they want to help also the national government, Your Honor.
Okay. Could it?
May I intercede, Senator Recto?
If I may finish this point,
Yeah.
Madam, and I will.
Senator Villar can answer all the questions of Senator Recto, Mr. President, if she wants.
No, I just want to say
Are you
that the
allowing?
local government are purchasing because they don't think the national government can purchase for them.
I was going to get to that. I was going to get to that, Mr. President. So, is it?
Senator Angara, Senator, are you allowing interjections?
Yes, of course, Mr.
Yeah.
President.
All right, go ahead,
You
Senator.
know, I value.
I've said it.
I value. This is the same reason why. Okay, what Senator Villar said is my impression is that the local governments stepped up to the plate and said, "O sige, payagan na ninyo kami mag-negotiate because tingin nila there are at least two reasons." One is they think that they can procure it faster than the national government. Okay? What is
Yes, Your Honor.
to be another reason, Mr. President, why the local government units are interested to purchase their own vaccines? Ano kaya yung iba
Your
pang
Honor, I think the choice of brand is also another factor that's been pointed out to me by a resource person.
Correct.
Some local governments wish to prefer a certain brand over another. Perhaps they have done their own research and
Correct. Okay. Hindi kaya ba nabahala yung local government because lagi sinasabi sa palasyo na halimbawa, ang mauuna yung Sinopharm, Sinovac, or whatever. Okay?
yes, Your Honor. I think hindi naman
Wala pa
not referring
naman,
to any
FDA.
brand in particular, Your Honor,
Yes.
but I think they wanted greater freedom or greater latitude when it came to actually choosing the particular
Correct.
vaccine. Your
So,
Honor.
they want to offer their constituency choices. Isn't that correct?
Your Honor. That's I think that's 100% correct, Your Honor.
At di ba nababahala yung tao ngayon, marami ayaw magpabakuna. But if you offer them choices that, okay, we have 2 or 3 brands available. Maybe mas gaganda yung take-up ng vaccine din to a certain degree. So, would you say that these are some of the reasons why the local government units are stepping up to the plate, so to speak,
Yes, Your Honor.
and wanting to purchase their own vaccines?
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. President, just very quickly, with the permission again of Senators Recto and Angara, just a quick interjection.
Yes, Your Honor. Please.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I think one major reason to respond to the query of Senator Recto is the last 10 months, 11 months of delays. The delay in the ayuda of 4 months. The delay in the testing laboratories of several months. The delay in delivery of PPEs. The delay in contract tracing. And all other delays because of precisely procurement, bureaucratic red tape. And so the local governments in the last 11 months, sa kanila hinahanap yung contact tracing, sa kanila hinahanap yung testing, sa kanila hinahanap yung ayuda. Eh sabi siguro nila, tayo nang kumuha dahil sa atin hinahanap at nagkakaroon ng sobrang delay sa bureaucracy. I think that is also a major reason why the local governments want to step up For the record, Mr. President, thank you.
Tama po yun, Mr. President. Yung ibang local governments gusto talaga magpakitang gilas at to prove that they are up to the task and that they have the welfare of their constituents
Yes.
at the forefront
Correct,
of their
correct.
thinking. Pero meron din pong, may nakausap din po akong mga local chief executives na hindi naman bibili ng sarili nila despite our measure which would facilitate the purchase. Ayaw naman nila bumili dahil ayaw naman nila na sila yung masisisi daw sa kapag may side effect yung mga vaccines.
Yes, that is also correct, Mr. President. Well, not only that, but there are also local government units that do not have the resources.
That's correct.
To begin with,
That's
Mr.
correct.
President. And they will be relying on the national government to do the purchases. Okay.
Tama po, Mr. President. Tama po.
Yes. Okay. So it is only the richer cities and maybe a few rich municipalities. In fact, not all the cities would be willing to purchase vaccines because they don't have the resources to begin with. But again, let us put on record that supposed to be there are sufficient funds. So it doesn't make sense, unless, like I said, that the local government units think that they can do it faster and promote choices to give their constituency more choices in the selection of vaccine. Okay, so moving forward, Mr. President. Okay, section
The
E.
permission of the two gentlemen.
Senator Cayetano is recognized.
The permission of the sponsor, Senator Angara,
Oh, yes,
and our
certainly.
Senate President Pro Temp. I just wanted to echo what the Senate President Pro Temp mentioned about the fact that we do have the resources. I was just in a meeting that Secretary Dominguez asked me to have with his USEC Mark Joven, about the funding, the vaccination, and all that. And clearly, there is funding. No, we have the multilateral agreements, loans that are available. The facilities are available, and it will cover the entire population that we want to vaccinate. So it continues to confuse me. I've brought this up in the two out of the three hearings that we had in the Committee of the Whole. What exactly is the role of the funding that the local governments are providing? And the Senate President Pro Temp, I think, kind of said, is it because they're not confident that it will be delivered to them, or that they want to ensure that they think that they can get it faster? Because that continues to baffle me. It baffles me to no end that the government has set up this multilateral facility that is available at very good terms, and yet local governments, because they want to take care, I know that, because they want to take care of their constituents, are also setting aside funding. And I kept on saying, I wish this could be clear, because that is funding that they could be using on other aspects of the expenses related to the whole vaccination, the whole healthcare, and the whole recover from COVID. So I just put that out there because it continues to baffle me. And I don't seem to, no one is telling them not to, because they want to take care of their constituents. We understand that. So sayang na lang yung because if you really look at the resources, I'm pretty sure the funding that DOF got is probably the best ever. And maybe that's where the two gentlemen can put on record from their experience or knowledge that they probably got the best terms ever. It's the best use of money, because the rates to borrow those funds are very, very favorable. That's all, Mr. President. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that to our good chair of Ways and Means, Your Honor, Mr. President.
Senator Villar is raising her hand. Go ahead.
Basically, it was a question to the good sponsor. No, are you like me, equally baffled?
I'm not baffled because I didn't know that much. I didn't know as much as you, Your Honor. So I'm not
So now I
baffled.
made you baffled.
I'm not baffled yet, but now
you're
now
baffled.
that you mentioned it,
I mean, that's just hanging out there. That's what I'm saying. No?
Yes.
If we really care about our resources, shouldn't somebody be taking a position and saying, look, LGUs, we can assure you that we can purchase this and deliver to you sooner than later. And therefore, you can use, that's going to be a few millions for those who propose to set aside funding for that, right? So yun lang naman for them to be able to think about this. Kasi like I said, nobody questions that their desire is to make it available to their frontliners and the most vulnerable of their population. But I just feel it's a lack of coordination or lack of
I was about to say that, Your Honor, it could be an
Yes.
information asymmetry. Maybe the local governments do not know about this, and perhaps
No.
the information has not been disseminated enough for
Miss-
them to make their decisions, Mr.
the
President.
Senate President Pro Temp said that it's just their level of confidence that if they do this, they feel like this will ensure that it gets to me sooner.
Yes, yes.
But is that true? Is that true? So, and Secretary Duque, who is sitting behind the sponsor, is shaking his head. So, you know what I mean? Let's be clear about these things because this is valuable resources that could be used maybe to have more safety guards in place so that kids can go back to school. It's 11 months.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's all related.
Yeah, I see her point,
Yeah.
Your Honor and Mr. President.
Again, let me reiterate, Mr. President. So one is the speed in getting the vaccines, and that's why the local government units want to do their purchase. And the second is to provide their constituency with choices. Kasi nababahala sila in the beginning, para sinasabi, kung ano yung nandyan, yun ang ibibigay sa inyo. Diba? And referring to some Chinese branded vaccines. Not that I'm against it, Mr. President, pero nababahala yung mga ibang local government units. And precisely why? Let me ask now the sponsor. Has any local government vaccine, what are the brands of the local government vaccines have they lined up to purchase?
Mostly AstraZeneca, Mr. President, Your Honor.
Mostly AstraZeneca, di ba?
Yes, Your Honor.
Meron ba nag-line up for Sinopharm o Sinovac?
Before you answer, Senator Villar is seeking the floor. Go ahead.
Wala pa ho. If I may answer, Mr. President, before
Okay.
Senator Villar, wala pa ho daw dun sa iba kasi hindi pa daw bukas yon sa mga local governments.
Kami kasi, Senator Recto, in Las Piñas, we bought two kinds, AstraZeneca and Novavax.
Yes.
We ordered,
Yes.
and they have signed it. Oh.
Yes. Thank you for the...
Hindi lang AstraZeneca. And we are, Senator Recto, we are buying because we're afraid that there will be no vaccine that will arrive in Las Piñas. And even the private sector, kaya sila bumibili, natatakot sila na walang vaccine na dadating sa kanila. Yung tagal natin ng pagbili ng vaccine, parang dinadoubt nila kung may dadating na vaccine. Kaya hindi sila, this is not misuse of resources. I told our mayor na kahit wala ka nang magawa sa Las Piñas, basta i-vaccinate mo mga tao, matutuwa ang tao sa'yo. So we're buying. We're buying for the whole use of Las Piñas except our yung, di ba may entitlement tayo sa COVAX na 20%? Yun lang ang hindi namin binili, yung entitlement sa COVAX.
Okay. So the intervention of Senator Villar bolsters my claim earlier that the local government units want to purchase because they think that they can do it faster, one, two, to provide choices, as I mentioned earlier. Even if there is sufficient resources supposed to be at the national government level. Okay?
Yes, Your Honor. Yes.
So thank you for that. Moving forward, Mr. President. Okay. So and in fact, mauuna nga yung local government and the private sector. Some local governments will be ahead and the private sector will be ahead kasi they have perfected contracts already.
Hindi daw ho. Ang mauna talaga is the national government, Your Honor, kahit na perfect na po yung sa local governments.
Yes.
Mauna pa rin daw ho yung national government.
Una yung national government because of the COVAX facility. At saka yung donation ng China.
Yes.
I suppose, di ba?
Yung Novavax daw ang mauna according to Secretary Galvez.
Okay,
Mr.
very
President,
good.
Your Honor.
Very good. Okay, but the point is, meron local government na mauuna din. Kasi nauna.
They will be among the after the frontliners. I think they're set to receive it second quarter, third quarter.
Yes.
Third quarter daw yung mga local governments, especially yung mga nauna, Mr. President.
Okay, understood. Okay, so let's move forward, Mr. President. Now, also in Section 3, there is a provision here, and not that I'm against it again, or in favor of it. I just wanted to find out why are we putting a limit to the advance payment of 50%?
I'm sorry, I was interrupted by Secretary Galvez talking to me at the same time, Your Honor. Could with apologies, may you repeat your question?
Yes, no problem. Why is it that there is a limit of 50% for advance payment?
For the local governments, Your Honor.
Yes.
That was inserted by our colleague, Senator Pangilinan, because he believes that so there would be no crowding out effect, Your Honor. So
No, we're
the
talking about.
prioritization, I think,
No, we're talking
needs to
about.
be maintained.
We're talking about the 50% advance payment, not the 50% of the population.
Well, the 50% advance payment, I think, Your Honor, is the standard practice adopted by the pharmas and manufacturers, Your Honor. So I think it was just to conform with that.
Yeah. Kung magbabayad ng mas malaki, mas mabilis ba? Halimbawa, like I said, earlier, did Singapore pay 50% or did he pay in full? What if there is a supplier wanting more?
Well, I'm told they officially will not say that, Your Honor, but maybe in practice that may be what really occurs.
Yeah. So why limit it here? If we want to expedite,
Open to increasing that? Are we open?
we're not saying increasing it now. We're just saying let's be silent. Allow advance payment, but let's not put a cap. If that will help.
Well, I think they're trying to strike a balancing act, Your Honor. The 50% is to enable us to, large enough to enable us to secure a supply, but also perhaps not to be at the mercy of the manufacturers and pharmas, because they might ask for a bigger amount.
So what's wrong with
We're
that?
limited by law, Your Honor.
What's wrong with that? What if the other countries are not limited by law? What's wrong with that? We're
I
talking
think
only
it's to ensure delivery as well, Your Honor. Mahirap na yung nagbayad ka ho ng 70%, tapos biglang sasabihin sa'yo ng manufacturer, we cannot meet pala our deadline of, our promised deadline of February or March. So yun po yung, I think that's what they had in mind when they came up with the 50%. And I also consulted our DOF officials here present, and that's also the answer I'm given, Your Honor.
No, I understand that. All I'm saying is that there are countries who have paid more than 50% and got their vaccines ahead. I'm just saying that if we're going to pass a law, allow for the advance payment, but maybe we should be silent. Right? Baka naman mas mabilis pag sinabi natin na okay, we can pay the full amount. I don't believe naman that these companies tatakbuhin pa tayo niyan.
They're pointing me to the experience of Thailand, Your Honor, for instance, where I think they went 100 million doses for, Indonesia, for AstraZeneca, and suddenly they were told that they would not be able to meet the deadline, Your Honor.
Yeah,
So
but that is a supply issue. I understand that, but that is a supply issue, I suppose. No. Nevertheless, mauuna ba ang Thailand sa Pilipinas? That's the problem if we put all these caps and limits. That's what I'm saying. Something to think about. I will not belabor the issue. I'm just thinking of ways and means to expedite the process.
We understand, Your Honor. We'll take it up with the DOF and the other executive agencies here, Your Honor.
Okay. Now, okay. Because remember, the purpose of all of this is to make it easier for local government units to procure and the private sector to procure, or especially the government instrumentalities, in this case, the local government unit, and for auditing purposes as well. Diba? But then you're putting a cap. Okay, so let's
Yes, Your Honor. Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you for that, Mr. President. And then now, we're at Section 4. Okay, so Section 3 was the general on the procurement of vaccines. No? Okay. Oh, one more question on Section 3. Why is there a section or in the last line provided further that this section shall have retroactive application
Enter into na.
beginning January 1, 2021?
That's because it's to some of the LGUs, Your Honor, have already, as we mentioned earlier, as we discussed earlier, entered into those agreements with AstraZeneca.
Yeah.
It would cover those agreements, Your Honor.
Correct. Okay, thank you for that, Mr. President. Okay, so now Section 4. Section 4 talks about, again, the procurement. Actually, it's not only the procurement, but the administration of vaccines, no? Because the title only talks about procurement. But there are paragraphs here on how it will be administered, no?
Yes, Your Honor. Yes.
Okay. Now, here there is also a provision that the local government unit can only purchase 50% of their target population for vaccination. Not that I'm against it, again, just to clarify the intent of this provision, Mr. President.
Yes, I think we discussed it earlier, Your Honor. This is the Pangilinan provisions from Senator Kiko to ensure that there would be no crowding out effect, I think, Your Honor, and then to ensure also that the national government prioritization would somehow still be respected to a certain extent, Your Honor.
What does that mean, crowding out effect? So that they cannot corner the supply? Ganun ba yun?
I think so. I think there are concerns that the richer LGUs may be able to purchase. Of course, this may no longer be true going forward. But I think at some point there was a concern that the richer LGUs, an equity problem, Your Honor, of sorts, where there would be a crowding out of the national government and the other state actors, Your Honor.
I don't think that the LGUs can crowd out the national government only if the LGUs act faster. But in this case naman, dadaan pa rin sa NTF eh.
Yes, you're correct. Since the current procedure is to go through the NTF, there will be no, and under the bill also, it preserves that arrangement, Your Honor. So
Yes.
talagang maayos po yung pag-procure natin, I think.
All I'm saying is that my impression is this, Mr. President. No? The national government, if it gets its act together and purchase the vaccines, if the LGU wants to buy more and give the best possible vaccine to its constituents, and then the national government purchases whatever is available in the market, right? It can give more now to the less developed, less rich LGUs. Mas marami pa mabibili ang Pilipinas.
Yes, definitely. We agree with you, Your Honor. And that's part of the philosophy or the moving philosophy behind this measure is really to put all the resources and put all the wherewithal together towards the same goal.
Yeah, and that's why I'm saying that my impression is that there might need not be a cap. Because ilan lang ba? Okay, let me ask the question. How many LGUs have listed with the NTF?
Ilang LGUs ang nag-list? $39 LGUs, Mr. President.
Okay. Are all these LGUs cities?
How many cities? 16 cities, all of the ones in Metro Manila, Mr. President.
Okay.
Still awaiting, begging your indulgence, Mr. President.
Okay. Assuming, and what did they order? Did they want to order 100% for their population?
Anong bang gusto mo?
I mean, the adult population? Their targeted population, or did they just order 50%?
I don't believe they reached that point, Mr. President, because the DILG told them there was already a limitation. But perhaps you're correct. They had that desire perhaps at the start before they were told by the DILG that there were limitations.
If they're willing to buy those vaccines, ilan lang naman yan eh. Ang may pera para bumili eh. Then the national government, the allocation for that particular city, they can now give it to the countryside kung walang cap, ha? kung walang cap? Something worth considering. I understand the basis for the cap.
Yeah, yes, Your Honor. We're open to that. Perhaps we need to discuss it with the
Yeah.
author of the
Mr. President.
proviso. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mr. President, I think Senator Lacson is raising his hand with the indulgence of Senator Recto. Yeah.
Senator Lacson is recognized.
Thank you,
With
Mr.
the
President. With the
permission
permission of the Senate President Pro Tem,
Yeah.
just to
Yes,
pursue the
thank you,
point
Mr. President. Yeah.
on the 50% cap. The point is just to be consistent with the desire to attain herd immunity, and this is at 75 to 85%. Would it be possible to increase the cap to 75% at least instead of 50%? So LGUs may be who may be capable or who have the wherewithal to procure vaccines more than 50% as required by the bill, by the measure. Can we at least improve it or increase it to 75%?
Your Honor, the officials here present are imposing no objection, Your Honor, to
Thank you.
to your proposal and Senator Recto's proposal.
As a-
Maybe we should ask Senator Kiko if he is amenable to that.
As a matter of fact, that would be one of my amendments.
Thank you, Your Honor.
At the proper
Yes.
time. Thank you,
Mr.
Mr. President.
Mr.
Thank you,
President, I have no.
the gentleman from Cavite.
Proceed.
Mr. President, Senator Pangilinan is raising his hand.
Senator Pangilinan, go ahead. Senator
Thank you, Mr.
Pangilinan.
President. Thank you, distinguished sponsor, and with the permission also of Senator Recto, who has the floor. I have no objections, Mr. President, on lifting the cap. The only reason why I raised that was I did not want to have inconsistencies with the law and the policy of the IATF. In fact, I raised this during the committee of the whole hearing. Why is there a cap? Especially for Metro Manila, where you have I'd like to think, one of the hardest hit in terms of COVID. You'd like to have as many people vaccinated. And so to limit it at 50%, Mr. President, I feel the proposal earlier by Senator Lacson is meritorious. I was only proposing it so that there was no inconsistency. We didn't want the left hand not knowing what the right hand was doing. But if there is the IATF interposes no objection, Mr. President, I'm more than willing to have that cap set aside, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr.
But,
President. Thank you, Senator Pangilinan, for that.
Yeah.
That clears up the matter, I think, and the road is open to an amendment for that provision, Mr. President.
All right, Senator Villar, raising your
Yeah.
hand.
35, talagang 65% lang naman ang mababaccinate because 35% are below 18. So 65% na lang talaga ang babaccinate. And then we will be given 20% of our population by COVAX as free. That is the provision of the program of the WHO. So you remove another 20%. Kaya talagang ang bibilhin lang talaga somewhere along 50%. That's the maximum.
Thank you, Your Honor.
But just to clarify here, we're talking here of the target, not the entire population, as provided for in the bill, Mr.
Get na yun. Oo.
Okay? So when I talk about the target, I'm talking about the 70% na 18 and above talaga, or 65%, whatever that number is.
So you're talking of the target.
Yes, because the bill talks about the target, and the target, the 100% target is 65% of the population, which is 18 and above.
Yes, yes.
Okay, so the
Mr.
target
President,
population for vaccination.
I'm
yes.
learning so much from the two stalwarts of the Nacionalista Party, Mr. President.
No, that we computed that when we bought for Las Piñas. So your total population times 65% because 35% are below 18. So
Correct.
65 na lang, and then COVAX will give you 20% because that is the provision of that free from the WHO. So matitira sa'yo is really something like 50%.
Yeah. Okay, but
Of
still,
the population.
there is a cap. Okay, now,
Let's leave
having
it.
said that, when we talk about the COVAX, since it was brought up, yung 20% ng COVAX is not the entire population, isn't it? It is also the target population.
Mahirap na.
Mr.
It as 20% of the population.
Can
I
we
don't know. Is there a question addressed to me, or
Yes,
are
the
the
question
two
is that
stalwarts talking to each other, Mr.
No,
President?
no, you can answer because I don't know what is the interpretation of 20% really. I assume it's the entire population. So I
Precisely.
might be wrong.
Precisely why I'm asking for a clarification with the sponsor, since the IATF secretary is with us today. When we talk about the 20% ng COVAX, is it talking about the entire population or the target population for vaccination?
Yeah, the bill provides target. That's correct, Your Honor. And according Secretary Duque mentioned in the course of the debates, it's no longer 20%. It's 15% that will be donated, Mr. President.
Yeah, 15% of the
As an addendum.
population or the target population?
Of the total adult population. So I guess that I suppose
the
total
target.
adult is synonymous with target, Your Honor.
Correct. So that's clarified. Thank you for that, Mr. Chairman. Okay. So again, the point that I raised and the point of Senator Lacson is still valid. Okay, because we're saying
Corrected, Your Honor. I've been corrected by the very valid.
Okay, so
I
thank
just
you
want to
for
correct
that.
what I said earlier, Mr. President. When I said the total adult population might be synonymous with target, it's not the same. I was told. I've been corrected, and target would not, for instance, would not include pregnant women and other
Yes.
people at risk factor. So
Yes.
the more precise term perhaps is target population.
Got it. Thank you very much, Mr. President. Now, moving forward, also in this section on line 12, it says, if the procurement of vaccine is funded by the national government. So there are two paragraphs here. If the procurement of vaccine is funded by the national government, the LG shall comply with the science and evidence-based terms and conditions of deployment and prioritization provided by the National Immunization Technical Advisory Group. Okay? If you follow the next paragraph, LGU-funded vaccines, we are differentiating. And I could understand why. But just to clarify, because now is the opportunity, Mr. President, no? Okay. Ano ba talaga ang priority ng national government? Kasi week to week, parang nag-iiba. What is the priority? I think, I think number one is there's no debate on the healthcare workers, di ba? Frontliners.
Mr. President, if I may be allowed to read in response, priority groups, that's the group 1. This includes healthcare workers, senior citizens, the indigent population, military and uniformed personnel, other frontline workers and special population. Criterion 2 is the geographic location based on, first, the COVID-19 burden of the disease, I suppose where it is rampant, Mr. President. And 2 is the LG readiness to effectively and efficiently deploy vaccines. And then the third group is the sub-priority, what they call the sub-priority groups. And these are based on exposure and mortality risk. So,
so that is
that's the current priority, Your Honor.
That's the prioritization of the national government, right? Okay, understood.
Yes, Your Honor.
Now, when they procure vaccines and give it to a locality, okay, what is the priority list?
Still the same, Your Honor.
I think it's different because there you spoke about geographical location. You were talking about there, when they distribute the vaccines, uunahin nila yung area sa mataas yung COVID. Understood?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Now, at the local level, when they fund the vaccine program at the local level, who will, because it's not listed here in the bill, unlike in the local government funded vaccine. Okay?
They will still go back to criteria 1 or the group 1, Your Honor. Priority pa rin yung healthcare workers, senior citizens,
senior second, military, okay,
and other frontline workers.
Police, and then very broad na yung frontline workers,
Yeah, it's a broad phrasing, Your Honor. Other frontline workers.
And then what is next?
Special population. The next is yung group 2, yung based on geographic location. So depending on the COVID burden and as well as the LGU readiness, Your Honor.
Yeah, but we're talking already here about binigay na sa LGU eh. So non-issue na yung LGU readiness. Okay? Now,
So after that would be the group 3, the sub-priority groups, Your Honor.
Which is?
Anong ibig sabihin? Based on exposure and mortality risk. So priority will be healthcare workers directly providing care, seniors in the highest age group, indigents in localities with the highest burden, high-risk comorbidities, and highest crowding.
Okay.
So these are
okay.
additional factors, I think, but it reinforces the earlier groups, Your Honor.
Yes, I understand, Mr. President. The point that I'm driving at, Mr. President, okay, now, is this, no? For first point, we are differentiating here na procurement galing sa national government and procurement galing sa LGU in this particular section, okay? Now, in the LGU, nakalagay dito, health workers, unahin, senior citizen, and then indigent. But in the national, it doesn't say. It's not in the bill. Okay? Now, I just wanted to put on record, Mr. President, but before I do so, maybe ask the question, how are they doing it in Israel? Because apparently Israel is the fastest today in inoculating its citizens.
By age. By age.
You know?
That's precisely the point that I was driving at, Mr. President.
By age.
If we talk about science,
I was told that they're following, Mr. President, yung WHO prioritization also. So similar to ours, healthcare workers, tama si Senator Villar, by age, the senior citizens, etc.
Okay, so it is not similar to, the only similarity I see with how they're implementing it there and in other jurisdictions is there is no debate, healthcare workers, frontliners, because they are the ones who should be taking care of us. Okay? Second, yung senior citizen, dahil marami dyan may sakit na and sila yung tinatamaan ng COVID.
Yeah.
Opo, opo.
And then the third, you make comorbidity. And then next to that is by age na. The younger you are, the less susceptible you are. The older you are, the more susceptible you are.
Would his honor want to reverse that, Your Honor, to protect some of his those close to his heart, Mr. President?
My wife would already be eligible as a senior citizen, Mr. President. Okay, I may not be eligible yet.
Yes, Your Honor.
But having said
Very
that,
young.
yeah. But having said that, Mr. President, I suppose that the national government can take a look at how are they doing it in Israel, in Ireland, in the UK, and in other jurisdictions that have had successes.
Yes, Your
And
Honor. I think that's a very good suggestion. Because,
now, in the US, the CDC has a recommendation. Okay, but it is up to the state to do it the most effective and efficient way. So may local autonomy din. If they think that their priority should be different so that they can inoculate more people immediately. Okay, they have that capability.
yes, Your Honor.
Okay.
Seems like a sensible approach, Mr. President.
Yes, so maybe at the appropriate time, we can adopt certain amendments here, looking at best practices.
Yes, we are open to that, Mr. President, Your Honor.
Yes, thank you for that. Now, one last question on this particular section. When we talk about here of indigent persons, are we talking about the 4 Ps? Just to be clear.
Basis, yun ang basis. Yes, Your Honor.
So 4 Ps.
Ilan yun?
Okay?
Yes, Your Honor. It's the 4 Ps.
And then incidentally, yes, okay, so thank you for that response, Mr. President. Incidentally, what is the plan of the DOH and the IATF? Saan ba talaga i-inoculate yung mga kababayan natin? Will they be in hospitals? Will the inoculation be done in health centers? Have we identified the areas ba? And the manpower requirement.
As
Yes.
mentioned during the Committee of the Whole, Mr. President, there are 4,500 health centers being identified for inoculation or vaccine centers. But of course, this might vary depending also on the vaccine being used, Your Honor.
Okay. So, hindi pa maliwanag So
Ano po?
clearly, in the hospitals, to inoculate the health workers, walang problema doon, di ba?
Opo.
Okay. Now, in the hospitals, it would be hard na papipilahin mo daan-daan libong tao. Ilan lang ang hospital natin eh.
Yes, Your Honor.
Diba?
That's why I
What
think they're
about-
trying to find
Yeah.
as many vaccination sites, Your Honor.
Correct. Okay. What about municipalities na walang hospital? Where will you inoculate? Where will you
The
deliver?
rural health units, Mr. President, Your Honor.
Okay. So not all barangays have rural health units. Now, when we talk about
Buildings are also being considered as vaccination sites, Mr. President.
Okay. So today, that's what I said during the committee of the whole. Today, your initial response was 4,500 health stations. Is that correct?
I stand corrected, Your Honor. It's 4,500 vaccination sites, which includes the health centers as well as the
Hospitals.
rural health units and the
Correct.
school buildings, Your Honor.
Okay. Hindi pa kasama school building dyan, palagay ko. Okay, why? There are 45,000 barangays. If there are 4,500, yung ibang tao dyan, maglalakad ng 10 barangay bago umabot sa health station.
It's possible, Your Honor. There may be sites where or barangays where they need to transfer to another vaccination site, Your Honor.
Again,
I'm just thinking aloud in my province of Aurora. There are very remote barangays where they might have to take a banca even.
Yeah, correct. No, but on the average, there are 45,000 barangays, and if there are 4,500 stations, 10 barangay ang lalakarin mo to get inoculated.
Well, averaging it out, yes, Your Honor. Averaging
Yes.
it out. Yes.
Okay. Now, if you're going to do it in the schools, then almost all the barangays have schools.
Correct,
Mas mabilis.
Mr. President.
Okay. So something
Tama po,
I
tama
think
po
the
yun.
DOH and the IATF should really study moving forward, no? Especially once the vaccines arrive at sabay-sabay na yan later on.
They're doing as you suggested, Your Honor.
Yes. Okay. Okay. So thank you for that. And then, okay. Then you have here, when we talk about in this section, to ensure transparency, the LU shall also submit a master list of the names and profiles of the residents in the respective localities who are eligible to receive the vaccine to the national government. That would be the entire adult population. What is the reason for giving a list?
50%. Your Honor, are you asking me if that is equivalent to the adult population?
No. Why is there a need to give this list?
It was a request of one of our colleagues, Your Honor. We accommodated that amendment.
So it is not clear. What is the reason? Kasi dagdag trabaho lang yan eh. Okay? The idea here is to inoculate, to eligible It is
Yes.
the entire adult population who is eligible, right?
I think for coordination with the national government, Mr. President, so they could do the logistics properly.
But later on, meron naman tayo later on na yung passport pa eh. We'll get to that. We'll get
Yes, Your
to
Honor,
that.
yes.
All I'm saying is that we might be adding too much burden. Let them concentrate on the vaccination.
It's something we have to weigh, Your Honor. Yeah, since you're right, there may be a point where
Or maybe a report on who got the vaccines, but not a list of who are eligible, because everyone is eligible.
okay, we can fine tune that, Your Honor. We're open to that.
Sige, let's move on, Mr. President. Okay. I have not much question on the private sector, but here in the private sector, we're not requiring them to submit any list. Okay.
At the moment, no, Your Honor. At the moment, no.
That is not in the bill, no? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so let me move forward. Okay. I have no problems with Section 6.
Short, I don't keep it short.
Okay. What is the meaning of Section 7? How will this operate, Mr. President?
Section 7. This is the authority to make recommendations based on preliminary data from phase 3 clinic. I think this is a Cayetano amendment from our chair of the Committee on Ways and Means. She just wants to ensure that
Yeah, it only reiterates what is in the law, in the Universal Healthcare Law. Is that it?
UHC, as well as what we put in the Bayanihan, that everything goes to the HTAC,
Okay.
and there's a proper evaluation of the risks and
Yes.
the pros and cons of possible purchases, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you for that. So we are just strengthening here because that's already in the law, and I don't see a problem putting it here. But I just wanted to understand it. Nah, that
Thank
is
you, Your
the
Honor.
intent.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so let's move forward. Here, immunity from liability, Section 8, Mr. President. Okay. Why are we passing this? To ensure that covered persons like public officers, their employees, contractors, volunteers, who are duly authorized to carry out and actually carrying out the COVID-19 vaccination program will be immune from liability. Is that correct?
That's correct, under Section 8, Your Honor.
Okay. So why is there a need for the Secretary of Health to provide the guidelines if we are saying that they're already immune?
Well, I think the phrasing of the law is quite general. Perhaps there may be a need to identify who exactly are these public officers, who exactly are these employees, who exactly are these contractors and volunteers, Mr. President.
Okay. So at the proper time, what we can just do here is just make sure that they're immune from liability.
Yes,
Just
Your Honor.
general
That's the intention of the provision, Your Honor.
So there's no need for the Secretary of Health to provide guidelines and so on and so forth. Baka magka-problema pa tayo dyan later on, is that correct?
Your Honor, I think for the effectivity, I think if you look forward to page 7, section 13, line 17, there is a provision which we have put in a lot of our recent laws where the non-promulgation of rules shall not prevent the immediate implementation of the acts. This is born out of our experience with certain agencies taking a long time to issue regulations, Your
So
Honor.
not to take too much time, I will leave this section to the final points that will be made later on by the minority leader.
Thank you, Your Honor.
He will tackle this issue as well, Mr. President. So I will leave it to his better judgment. Now, on Section 9, Mr. President, on the National Vaccine Indemnity Fund, why are we know that it will be the PhilHealth who will do the compensation. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor. We are appropriating 500 million from the contingent
I'm not
fund
there
as
yet.
augmentation for
I'm not
PhilHealth
there yet.
funds.
Who will implement this? Wouldn't it be the PhilHealth?
Yes, Your Honor. Yes.
Okay. Have you seen the financial statements of PhilHealth, the most current? Are you familiar with the financial statements of PhilHealth?
I'm one thing I'm sure of is I've not studied it as well as the good Senate President pro tempore.
Okay. Now, the PhilHealth has 116 billion in reserve fund as of September 30, 2020. In fact, it made 6 billion last year. Kumita pa ang PhilHealth last year, ah. May net profit pa nga sila ng 5.3 billion net income. Hindi nagagastos yung pera ng PhilHealth. Okay? I have here their financial statements. Lumaki pa ang premium contribution nila last year as of September. Okay? So why is there a need to provide them an additional subsidy of 500 million?
I think, Your Honor, it's to this also was this provision was crafted in coordination with the Finance Department and the Office of the Minority Leader, Senator Drilon, to provide a minimum funding, since this is the demand or the request of many of the pharmaceuticals and manufacturers for the purchase agreements.
We have,
Your
but
Honor.
baka hindi nila alam. Here, I have a copy of the financial statement. I don't know if you can see that in the screen.
We can see it, Your Honor, as of September 30, 2020. Yes.
And I can show you here how much money they have. Okay? here, take a look at this, reserve fund. I don't know if you can see that.
It's a bit too small, Your Honor.
Okay.
Maybe.
Nevertheless, I'm sure you can trust me when I tell you
Yes, Your Honor.
that they have 116 billion in reserve fund and a net income of 5.3 billion.
I'll take your word for it, Your Honor. I have full
Yeah.
trust in your,
But the
especially when it comes to
problem-
figures, Your Honor.
But the problem is, just like the media today, when they quote this bill, they're saying that the indemnity fund is only 500 million. When
That's not quite accurate, Your Honor. The
That's not
500
quite-
million is meant to augment the funds of PhilHealth.
Correct.
Yes, Your Honor.
Correct. Now, because of this interpolation as well, we can say that based on the financial statements, there is 116 billion available for many things.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yes, Your Honor. That 116 billion is the universe of for the programs funded by PhilHealth. And
No,
this
reserve
provision.
fund. Reserve fund.
Yes, Your
Meaning
Honor.
to say that every year, dumadagdag lang to. This is a reserve.
Yes, Your Honor. Yes.
Okay? This is not intended for claims today.
Yes, Your Honor. It's
Based on
correct, Your
the
Honor.
premium contributions, subsidy of the national government, more or less that equals to all the benefit claims. But since people are not going to hospitals, hindi gumagastos masyado ang PhilHealth. Walang pupunta sa hospital para magpatingin lumalaki lang yung pera ng PhilHealth din.
Yes, Your Honor. Yes.
Okay, so and that's why I'm saying judicious use of resources. Why should we give them an additional 500 million? That's all I'm saying. And that is the purpose of the reserve fund to begin with, for problems of this nature.
I think, Your Honor, is just to provide just so the amount would not be in Kuwait, Mr. President. I think it was seen as a good decision to put a figure, and that figure would just be the minimum, in fact, as you pointed out.
Okay. Well, I don't know if that is wise use of resources, but we're just in effect giving PhilHealth an additional 500 million. To me, that's how it is.
Yes, subject to contingency, Your Honor, because if no one gets sick, then that 500 million will not be given, Your Honor.
Yeah. Okay. With that agreement, then maybe we can write it that way. Kasi kung may magkasakit, talagang trabaho ng PhilHealth yun What we can do here is we can craft a language na sagot ng PhilHealth yung indemnity fund, which is written here anyway. Di ba? Sagot naman talaga nila But we can make the language even better. But I think there is no need to provide them with 500 billion when they have 116 billion reserve. Okay? But let me move forward.
With the indulgence of the brilliant Senate President Pro Tem, I have just been told by some of our officials here that, for example, if a patient dies, that would not be covered by regular PhilHealth coverage. But with this provision, it would already be covered, Your Honor.
Yeah. Again, so let's write it here now. But there's no need to give them 500 million. That's my point. Let's write it here.
We're open to whatever His Honor wants to suggest, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for that. Okay, so let me move forward, Mr. President. In Section 10, we're talking about the exemption from import duties, taxes, and other fees, which I support, all of this. Okay, and this is already provided in the CREATE bill. Isn't that correct?
Yes, Your Honor. Yes, I think it's meant to supplement. Meant to supplement what's in CREATE, in Bayanihan, etc.
Correct, and I support that, Mr. President. However, in CREATE, in the final version, we did not put December 31, 2023.
Yes, Your Honor. That's as wider. I would expect that to be wider in terms of time coverage.
Yes.
And then as a further distinction,
yes.
I think yung sa CREATE, I'm not sure if the donor's tax was covered, Your Honor.
No, the donor's tax is not covered, so that's fine with me. All I'm saying is that when it comes to vaccines under CREATE, okay, walang limit until December 31, 2023.
So we could insert a proviso subject to the provisions of CREATE, Your Honor, something like that.
Yeah. Basta if there is a need for vaccines kasi, because chances are this will be a long drawn out
Yes,
process.
that's what Bill Gates said, Your Honor. He's saying there may be mutations down the road.
Yes. And therefore, it doesn't seem wise, and that's why in CREATE, what we did in the vaccines, walang limit until December 31, 2023. If there is a need for coronavirus vaccines after 2023, why should we subject it to taxes?
I agree, Your Honor. We can phrase it to reflect
The appropriate time.
a greater synthesis with the CREATE bill, Your Honor.
Yes, thank you very much. And then finally, Mr. President, on the vaccine passport program. Okay. I support this, Mr. President, but here we're saying that the DOH and together with the DICT will make this, will make the vaccine passport program. They're the two government agencies tasked to do the vaccine passport program. Is that correct, Mr. President?
The two agencies being the DOH and the DICT, Your Honor?
Yes, the DICT, if it is a digital.
Yes,
Right.
yes, Your Honor.
Okay, now having said that, Mr. President, what about the local initiatives? Because sometimes the local governments are better in doing this. Could we add a proviso later on that the a local initiative on a vaccine passport pwede ma-accredit halimbawa ng DOH o DICT coming from the local government? I'll give you an example. The contact tracing in Baguio is a very good system. The DOH does not have that program. But in Baguio, they have a good contact tracing system. They have an app that is widely used in Baguio. Even for those visiting Baguio, I went there last January and I was able to use the system. It's pretty good. Okay? Now, in Pasig, for example, there is also a system. When you enter a mall, okay, may phone ka, there's a digital technology that they're using for contact tracing as well. So hindi mo na kailangan mag-login pa na manually and all that. Kung wala kang telepono, login ka manually.
Mhm.
Okay? Now, these are locally initiated. Okay? Could we have a better language here that the national government, the DOH, following their standards, may minimum standard naman yan eh. Di ba? That we recognize local initiatives.
Hindi siguro as long as dadaan sa kanila yung system, di ba? Yes, Your Honor. I think it's a possibility. I think the concern here is the interoperability among local government units, and perhaps if they go through the coordinating mechanism of the
Correct. But the problem is, this is the problem, Mr. President. Let's talk about contact tracing. It is locally initiated today. There is no national government contact tracing system operating. That's the problem. Here we're saying trabaho ng national. But they failed miserably in doing it to begin with. Now, in Pasig City, they have a good system. In Baguio City, they have a good system. So why not recognize those? That's all I'm saying. So in the
definitely Baguio. I agree with you. Baguio is definite. That's why I think the national government made Mayor Magalong the contact tracing star for good reason. As you mentioned. And again, I reiterate, Mr. President, I don't think there is a problem.
President Pro Tem,
Yeah.
are you implying that the mayor of Pasig and the mayor of Baguio are good? Or very good?
Yes, I am implying, especially that the mayor of Pasig is a Soto.
But maybe the mayor of Pasig is only the second best Soto in public service, Mr.
And
President.
I agree with that, Mr. President. The spring cannot rise higher than the source.
Please proceed.
And don't forget the Vice Mayor of Quezon City also is also very good, Mr. President.
Me and my big mouth. Go ahead. Please proceed.
Alam po ninyo, yung puno ng mangga, pag nahulog yung mangga, hindi malayo sa puno. Mangga. Magaling pa rin yun. So, having said that, and that's why, you know, I'd like to help champion the initiatives of local government units. And with regard to this passport system, it will be the primary concern anyway of the local government also to ensure that they're able to vaccinate their population. For those who can do a good system, we must include a provision here that it can be recognized. Na pag ito galing sa Baguio to o galing to halimbawa sa Pasig o maayos to.
Yes, Your Honor. I think
Like
we
that.
can work that out subject to the correct safeguards and subject to interoperability because we cannot have each
Correct.
LGU issuing its own system, Your
Correct,
Honor.
correct.
So I agree with you, Your Honor.
Yeah,
Mr.
the
President.
minimum requirement here is already in the law anyway. It says here, yung minimum requirement mo, basic personal information such as full name, manufacturer, brand name, and batch number or other identifier of the COVID-19 vaccine, date of vaccination.
That's right.
Dito na rin eh.
Yes, Your Honor.
Oh,
Yes, I think those two systems can work together, Your Honor.
okay. So and then finally, yes.
Senator
Senator
Cayetano
Cayetano is
wishes
raising
to
her hand.
interject.
Thank you. Again, with the permission of the two gentlemen.
Yes, certainly.
That is my amendment. That is actually called from my bill, bill that I filed on passports that was filed in the Committee of Health, and so we pulled that out and included here. So I'm okay with I'm giving my advance permission
Thank you.
to
Thank
His
you.
Honor to edit in whatever way because I also am aware that LGUs, of course, Taguig City is the mayor is my brother, and they also have their local system. So
Yeah.
the intention of that provision was not to say that we will not recognize LGUs, and I'm glad the Senate President Pro Tem pointed it out. It's more to say that somebody has to take the lead and get this done.
Right.
But definitely, I agree with the Senate President Pro Tem that let's recognize and acknowledge the efforts and tie it in any way we can. And again, with the permission of the two gentlemen, I also just want to point out that the requirement of the list, I just want to tie it in here, the master list that was in an earlier provision. Although that was not my amendment, I think His Honor said Senator Kiko's, no?
For the 50%, Your Honor?
No, the list, the master list.
Was that from you? I'm sorry. I
No, it
apologize.
wasn't.
Ah,
But
okay,
I'm
it was
also
from one of
making
our
a
colleagues, Your
comment.
Honor. Yeah.
I'm also making a comment on that because I noted that, but it was already an amendment included by His Honor, I think by Senator Kiko. Just to spread into the record, the importance of that is that because His Honor, the Senate President Pro Tem said we already have the passport. So for me, it's like the two ends of the two sides of the same coin. Like on the one side, the passport is held by the citizen, but on the other side, there has to be the master list that somebody is in charge of so that we know what's going on all over the place. So
Yeah.
again, subject to style, I think we all
I think-
recognize the importance. I don't intend to have any duplication,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
that's the reason for that. That's all.
Thank you. That's well
I'm
taken.
okay.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you, Your Honor.
I'm okay with a master list of those vaccinated. But there it talks about, in that section earlier, it is a master list of those eligible.
Yes, and we agree with you, Your Honor. Perhaps it's better to have a list of those vaccinated, Your Honor.
Yes, yeah. Now, and then just to wrap up, to
Mr. President.
finalize.
Just very quickly, because my name was mentioned, with the permission of Senator Recto and
Yes. Willingly, Mr. President. Yes.
Yes,
Just
please.
very
Yes,
quickly,
please. Your Honor.
just 2 points. I think the reason for that master list, I was part of the discussion, but I don't recall anymore if I proposed that amendment. But I remember Senator Drilon saying that he wanted to have a clear understanding of the vaccination process in the local level because naalala ko baka nga gamitin sa politika at yung mga mababaccinate lang yung mga kakampi nung mayor at lahat nung kalaban ay hindi mababaccinate. So in other words, to be able to ensure that there is transparency in the process and of course accountability, that a list be made available. So, but again, subject to perhaps some refinement so that the principle of transparency is not set aside. We're more than willing to come up with the right language for this. And another point, Mr. President, in connection with the earlier point raised by Senator Recto, if the LGUs can be made accredited, to provide the passport accreditation, a vaccine passport, why not some in the private sector? For example, private hospitals should also be given the opportunity to, with the guidance and with the approval of the DOH, that they will delegate or they will deputize private hospitals to be able to likewise provide these passports, because doon din pupuntang ang ilan sa ating mga kababayan. So
Yeah.
perhaps that too could be incorporated.
Remember, there are two passports here. One is physical, na analog type o papel-papel lang, and the other one is digital. Okay? For those who may have a smartphone, pwedeng digital. Okay? That is what is contemplated here. No? And like I said, I'm worried that maybe the DOH and maybe even the DICT may not be able to do that. But locally initiated, it is possible, Mr. President. As
Yes, Your
there
Honor.
is,
Both,
it is available in Pasig and in Baguio, and I think other cities also in Metro Manila. No, now finally, another example, Mr. President. We are trying to roll out a national ID. There are local government units that have rolled out and are rolling out today a local citizens ID, which seem even to be better than the national ID. Meaning to say, if you come out with a register, let's say as a citizen, maybe of Makati or maybe Lipa City, automatic, you have a bank account. Ang national ID, walang ganun. Okay, so there are certain programs and projects digitally that are initiated by local government units that are very good. And that's why we were saying that it would be necessary, maybe at the appropriate time, that we include this in the bill, especially for this passport. Kasi dalawa yan, may isang papel at isang digital. So with that, Mr. President, I thank the patience of my colleagues, the Senate President, and most especially the sponsor of the measure, which we all support, with certain, and thank you for the clarifications. And at the appropriate time, we will probably make a few amendments just to improve the measure. So thank you very much to our brilliant sponsor of the Committee on Appropriations and Finance for this bill. It is very timely, and I thank him for his responses. It is clearer now what we intend to do with this measure. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. His honor is most welcome. And of course, I welcome his proposals at the proper time and thank him also for his very kind words and interventions that I believe will make the bill better, Mr. President.
Thank you,
Mr. President.
the President Pro Tem, Senator Recto. Yes, the Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd just like to put for clarity the information of all the list of interpellators. Next to interpolate is distinguished Minority Floor Leader Senator Franklin M. Drilon. Second will be Senator Coco Pimentel. Third would be Senator Ping Lacson. Fourth will be Senator Tol Tolentino, Mr. President, on the list that was given to me and how they applied. And after which Senator Kiko Pangilinan after Senator Tolentino. May we now recognize Senator Franklin M. Drilon, our distinguished Minority Floor Leader.
Senator Frank Drilon is recognized.
Mr. President, with the permission of
Senator
Senator Drilon.
Perhaps he wants to be on the list also.
That's correct, Your Honor.
Yes,
All
Mr.
right.
President, I will include him in the list after Senator Pangilinan.
All right. Senator, the Minority Leader, Senator Drilon is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the gentleman sponsor yield the floor to a few questions, considering that the brilliant Senate President Pro Tempore has covered almost all aspects of this bill, and were there just a few matters that we want to clarify and place of record on that premise? Can the good sponsor yield the floor? I know this is not an easy bill to defend given our situation today, but I must take my hat off to the chairman of our committee on finance in his defense of this bill. So having said that, may I request that the gentleman yield the floor for some questions.
Yes, certainly to the wise and learned minority leader, the pride of Iloilo, Haro, the pride of UP College of Law, and the fraternity of the Finance Undersecretary, Mr. President.
That's not the Upsilon Sigma Phi, I assume.
It's the other fraternity, the I don't want to say something that might get me in trouble, Mr. President, but
Anyway,
I think everyone knows these fraternities.
Anyway, Mr. President, that's just to put some light vein into the very difficult and serious discussion. But having already said that, yesterday I manifested that we are in full support of this bill because we know that given where we are today, it is an urgent issue on the matter of the vaccination of our people with the safe and effective vaccines. Now, in answer to the questions raised by the Senate President Pro Tempore, the good sponsor said that the purpose of this bill is to expedite the procurement and administration of the COVID-19 vaccines, and that the indemnity fund is a demand of the manufacturers. For the record, Mr. President, would the sponsor agree that the delay or the non-delivery of any vaccine at this point is not because we have not passed this measure? Because I don't want a situation where suddenly you find media a week from now saying, kaya po wala tayong nabibiling vaccine dahil lang ang Senado hindi na pinapasa yung panukalang batas. No such thing, Mr. President. In other words, in the opinion of the good sponsor, we could have purchased the vaccines even without this bill.
Yes, Your Honor. The gentleman is correct. My good minority leader is correct. I think it might just have affected the delivery, Your Honor.
Yes. No. In fact, the matter of indemnification of the indemnification fund, as Senator Recto pointed out, the PhilHealth fund can be made to answer for this. But insofar as the indemnification is concerned, we do not need this bill, Mr. President, because the indemnification can be is governed by our civil code on damages, meaning public officials can be liable if they perform if they're negligent in the performance of their contract. And the indemnification can be answered by, or the public funds, can be tapped for indemnification upon orders of the President. Would the gentleman agree with that?
By agreement, by contract. I was told by your fraternity brother that it would have to be by law or by contract, Your Honor, and not just on simple order of the President. But perhaps if there was a contractual agreement, then the President would have to indirectly authorize, since the one signing is most likely his alter ego anyway, Mr. President.
Yes, a contractual obligation can be established, but also is the good sponsor aware of, the good sponsor would agree with me that the President has full control over the budget on the aspect of the execution of the budget.
Execution, yeah. Yes, once we pass it, I think that's well established that it is the executive branch that implements the budget, Your Honor.
That's correct. And precisely the contingent fund, by its very nature, is supposed to respond to claims for damages.
I'm sorry, Your Honor. What about damages?
the indemnification issue can be presently addressed by the can be addressed presently by the budget, and with the president having full powers and authority over the budget, can indeed allocate funds from the contingent fund from which the indemnification can be sourced.
I think the gentleman is correct, Your Honor, Mr. President. It's just that I think there was a need perhaps to put it in black and white and make it more certain.
Yes, yes. What we're just trying to establish, this is an indemnification fund to respond to possible damages that may be claimed against the manufacturer. Is that correct? This is the possible. This is an indemnification fund that can be resorted to in case a recipient or a patient suffers injuries as a result of the vaccine. Di ba indemnification to para sa manufacturer?
That's not. This is for those who suffer death and or have to incur medical treatment, Your Honor.
I'm sorry. Yes, but why is it made a condition of the manufacturer?
Serious adverse effects. I think it's to ensure that they will not be held liable for this, given the short rollout period, Your Honor. I think it's part of the agreement. It's made part of the agreement for purchase of vaccines.
I take note of that statement, Mr. President. The manufacturers want to be able to be freed from liability in case there's a claim for damages. Is that not correct?
It's something. Yes, Your Honor. Yes.
Yes. That is why, if I got the answer, the statement of the sponsor earlier in consultation with Secretary Galvez, there was a delay or there are no supply agreement signed because of the lack of an indemnification fund from which payment of injuries can be sourced. Isn't that a correct statement, sir?
Next is why were the others delayed? Not necessarily, Your Honor. In some cases, yes, it was the reason. Like I think with the Johnson & Johnson, and then with Pfizer, it was one of the sticky points, Your Honor. But not for all agreements, I think.
Well, in fact, if I may speculate, the reason why this is put forward is because of the Vaxa controversy. In other words, the Sanofi was being held liable by the claimants for the vaccine administered, and they were together with the officials of the Department of Health. They are being made to answer for this for the damages or deaths caused by the vaccine. And isn't it logical that the manufacturers will now require that, since this vaccine is just on an emergency use authorization, that they should be held free and harmless?
Yeah, I agree with you, Your Honor. I think it not only accounts for the fear among the suppliers of the vaccines, it also accounts for the hesitation or the hesitance on the part of many to be vaccinated, Your Honor.
Yeah. So the indemnification fund is both for those who are vaccinated and for the manufacturer.
Directly, I think directly it's for those who suffer serious adverse effects, that as mentioned in Section 9. But indirectly, as you mentioned, it's also for the benefit. It benefits also the manufacturers, Your Honor.
Because if the claimant is compensated, the manufacturer would have no more liability.
That's correct, Your Honor.
Now, Having said that, Mr. President, I'm raising these questions because of the impression that might be created, and I underscore the word might, na hindi po dumadating ang bakuna sa atin dahilan po walang ganitong batas. Hindi po totoo yun, and we want to at least the good sponsors agreed with that.
We appreciate you putting that on record, Your Honor.
Yes. Now, having said that, Mr. President, in the Inquirer today, in its editorial, the editorial was entitled, "So where is the vaccine?" Yes, we raised that question, and I'm using that editorial because an hour ago, in the GMA.net is news that the Pfizer 117,000 vials, which were acquired under the COVAX facility, is that arriving?
That's the one that depends on the indemnity. So I think as soon as we can do this, I think this measure will provide reassurance and will greatly facilitate that particular agreement mentioned by the distinguished minority leader, Mr. President.
I'm a little bit concerned because if we just take a good look at this. First, the government, with its sovereign powers, can hold the manufacturers free and blameless for any damage that may be suffered by those who are injected with the vaccine. Certainly, that is binding upon the government, the entire government structure, so that the lack of an indemnity fund is the reason to be is a little stretched. In fact, the Secretary Roque did not cite that. He said, "I do not know why." In effect, he said that he has no information as to why this is not being delivered.
Your Honor, I think the purpose of the measure is not just the indemnity fund. Although that seems to be an urgent demand in some agreements. I think one of the moving forces behind this measure is the comfort level of the LGUs also, who have already entered into supply agreements, because given the local government code provision, which disallows advance purchases, Your Honor. So they are worried that although they have already contracted and perhaps these are already perfected and would be due and demandable in going forward, they're afraid of the legal repercussions. So that's also one of. So as you're correct in saying, it's not just the indemnity fund which should motivate us or which should be the moving force of the bill, but it's also that helping out our local government units who have bravely taken the initiative to help our people, Mr. President.
Okay, thank you for that, Mr. President. But for the record, up to us we are talking now, there is no supply agreement that has been firmed up and signed. Is that correct, sir?
Wala pa ho, Mr. President.
Wala pa.
Yes, you asked the same question during the
Yes.
Wednesday or Thursday hearing last week, Mr. President, distinguished minority leader. And as you ask it now, the answer is the same, Your Honor. Wala pa po.
Yes, I wanted to update myself, Mr. President. So up to now, wala pa rin napirmahang supply agreement.
Wala pa ho.
Bakit?
Yeah, I've been told that the term sheets or the offers are live or are valid until the end of February. So we have until the end of February to close these agreements, Mr. President.
are are we saying that before the end of February we will have supply agreements signed?
For all or some? Yes, Your Honor, we will have a few by the end of February.
Yeah, all right. Okay, I suppose by next week when we can validate that, I hope that we do not keep on postponing this. And I know for what reason we are postponing signing of the supply agreements. Huh? No. You know, Mr. President, really today, many are baffled by our situation. In Southeast Asia, there are already, out of the 10 Southeast Asian countries, 6 countries have already started inoculating their citizens. Singapore, Indonesia, Cambodia, Vietnam, Laos, and Myanmar. Even Bangladesh, which is a poorer nation, smaller GDP, mayroon na silang roll out. Bakit tayo hanggang ngayon wala pa rin?
Yes, I join you in wishing that we could move faster, Your Honor. But I think other countries have secured their supply at an earlier time, and as you mentioned, Singapore has already vaccinated close to 300,000. Indonesia has done 1.5 million. Myanmar has done 100,000. So I think, I think acting quickly has always been a challenge for the country. If you look at our infrastructure program, if you look at the implementation of many laws, Your Honor, it's been a challenge. And I wish I had all the answers, Mr. President, but in this case, I think it's important we do all we can to speed up the process. And I think this measure will definitely speed up that process, Your Honor.
Well, we join the hope of the good sponsor, and I would reiterate my my admiration, my sympathies with for the good sponsor for being confronted with these very difficult questions that would have to be asked because, Mr. President, the surveys indicate the lack of confidence of the people in our program. Recently, there was DILG was quoted as saying that, I don't know if it was DILG, but certainly there was a survey which said that only 3 out of every 10 medical workers would agree to a vaccination. 50% or 1 out of every 2 Filipinos would not want to be vaccinated. And this, to me, is a manifestation of the lack of confidence of our people in the ability of our government to address this issue. And this is because of previous incidents wherein there were conflicting statements. Sinasabihan pa yung mga tao, kung ayaw nyo if ayaw nyo ng Chinese vaccine, manigas na kayo or something like that. This does not increase the confidence of our people in our ability to administer this program. And by the way, talking about that, I think we intend to vaccinate about 70% of our people to achieve herd mentality, just for the record. Is that correct, sir?
75? Yeah. Somewhere between around 65 to 75%, Your Honor.
In terms of actual numbers, sir, how many would that be?
Around 70 million Filipinos, Your Honor.
70 million Filipinos. And what is under the vaccination program of the government? When will we achieve inoculating 70 million Filipinos?
Yung 70 win na for maybe. Your Honor, I looking at the scenario I've been given, the optimistic scenario I think is to vaccinate 50 million people by the end of the year, and then to do the remaining 20 million people in the first quarter of next year, Your Honor.
Mr. President, we are saying that roughly a little less than 10 million Filipinos will be inoculated every month for the next 6 months.
There is a schedule here before me, and they are looking at 10 million by September, Your Honor. But for February and March, April, there is a 9 million figure for May. But for February, March, April, it ranges from 3 to 5 million a month, Your Honor.
Mr. President, for the record, what is the history of our vaccination program? In the past, how large a population did we vaccinate?
5 million around 5 million a year for the various diseases or viruses, Your Honor.
5 million a year or 5 million total?
5 million a year, Your Honor.
5 million a year.
Total, yes.
Total, 5 million. And we expect to vaccinate 50 million in the next 6 months. Is that realistic? In the first place, we do not even have a single supply agreement signed. And number two, the supply is tight, so that the Pfizer vaccines are supposed to arrive on February 15th. Is that here? So
yes,
how realistic?
It's a tremendous undertaking, very ambitious. That's why I termed it the optimistic scenario, Mr. President.
So what is the more realistic scenario?
Well, I think we've chosen to really push the envelope here, and the DOF-USEC has mentioned this is a black swan event, meaning something that is unforeseen and something that probably no one has prepared for, but has affected people in various ways, and others have responded swiftly, and we're trying our best, Your Honor.
Okay. Now, going to some specific questions on the bill itself. The Section 3 on the procurement of vaccines, this would apply only to procurements made by the government. Is that correct?
That's correct, Your Honor, the national government.
Yes. Now, what agency or will be actually procuring this vaccine? Which entity?
Actually procuring? Joint procuring?
Yeah. Who will?
It's the DOH and NTF jointly, I've been told, Mr. President.
Sorry, sir? Sorry?
It's the DOH and the NTF jointly.
Yeah, well, yes, principally I assume the DOH, because the NTF is a task force and it's not an entity that can.
You cannot submit bids, di ba? It's the DOH. You're correct, Your Honor.
The DOH. Just for the record, the Philippine International Trading Corporation or Center will not be a procuring agency.
No, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you.
We know you love that agency, Mr. President.
Because they are, that's for another hearing, Mr. President, not this time. Is it true that AstraZeneca and Moderna are no longer taking orders for its vaccines because of the tightness of the supply? In other words, their facilities could no longer allow them to make firm commitments on the date of delivery?
He's just asking in general, not respect, in general, that their supply dried up. Yes, it's true, Your Honor. But they are quick to remind us that we've locked up our supply within their available supply. and we should not be subject to those shortages.
Oh, do we have that assurance from AstraZeneca and Moderna?
Yes, Your
Just
Honor.
Minority Leader, while you are checking on your on notes, may we ask the sponsor if we can find out from the IATF if they are really recommending an MGCQ for the entire nation?
They're meeting to discuss it with the cabinet on Monday, I am told, Mr. President, and they will come out with a decision soon after.
If they do decide, does that mean that they will allow face-to-face classes?
That's one of those to be discussed. That's something that they will discuss, Mr. President.
All right, please let us know right away so we can also have a face-to-face session.
We will convey.
Very
but,
very difficult to debate with the virtual.
But those present virtually might go home right away, Mr. President, if you require face-to-face sessions.
That's all right as long as they're here.
Okay.
If IATF recommends. Well, Minority Leader.
May I just remind the Senate President that we are independent to the IATF?
We were only looking at the recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. President.
The IATF's recommendation is weighty. That's what the Senate President is saying. But the Minority Leader's recommendation is weightier, according to him.
I think kung pagbubutuhan natin ito, matatalo ko si Senate President. Well, just a few matters, Mr. President. Now, on Section 8, this is immunity from liability. I agree with the good with the Senate President pro tempore that we should no longer, that we should just provide immunity from suit and liability the covered persons who are involved in the administering of the vaccine. Would the gentleman sponsor agree to that?
Full misconduct, pati gross negligence.
Hindi na kailangan pang guidelines ng Secretary of Health. This is on page 4 and earlier touched by the good Senate Majority President pro tempore. It reads, notwithstanding any law to the contrary, the Secretary of Health shall provide guidelines declaring a covered person to be immune from suit and liability under Philippine laws with respect to all claims arising out of, related to, resulting from the administration and or use of COVID vaccination program. We join the call of the Senate President pro tempore that we just provide exemption from liability unless there is willful misconduct or gross negligence, which is provided under our present laws, so that you can be made liable. You are immune from suit unless there is gross negligence or willful misconduct. Would the sponsor consider that in the period of amendments by just deleting the phrase or the words that would allow the Secretary of Health to provide guidance and instead provide an absolute immunity except for gross negligence or willful misconduct?
Well, I personally am open to it, but I am told by the Undersecretary for Finance that the metric used in the supply agreements is willful misconduct. Maybe it's a difference in legal systems, Your Honor, But I think, yeah, my initial reaction upon reading this provision, which came out of the talks with the congressmen, the local government leagues, as well as the Department of Finance, is that it should also cover gross negligence. So I don't know if this is a case of semantics or if we are referring to the same thing in effect, no? But I'm willing in principle, Your Honor, to listen to the proposal of the minority leader and express openness in this regard.
Yes. Right now, if you look at 931, the exemption is only for willful misconduct. As good sponsor is fully aware, there is also there can be liability for gross negligence. Hindi po ba?
I think that's universal access.
Mr. President, with the permission.
Yes, with the indulgence of the two distinguished gentlemen, Senator Lacson would like to interject. You're
Yes,
recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just to pursue the point being raised by the minority leader, maybe, and I'm thinking along this line, maybe we can include reckless imprudence.
That's another possibility, Your Honor.
That's
That's
voluntary,
a
but, it
concept
may cause-
in our revised penal code.
Yes.
So if you kill someone, you're still liable, but there's less culpability, or the penalties are lesser, Your Honor.
I will not
We're also willing to look into that possibility, Your Honor.
So I will not include that anymore in my interpellations later.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well,
Really to hear that.
although yes, we have no problems with that. Although gross negligence would certainly be broad enough to cover instances of reckless imprudence. But you know, only to emphasize it, we have no problems with that. In other words, the covered person is exempt from liability unless the liability arises from willful misconduct, gross negligence, or reckless imprudence. If the sponsor is willing to consider that.
Mr. President,
Yes,
indulgence of the gentleman.
Senator
yes,
Ontiveros.
Senator Risa Ontiveros is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Without speaking against the inclusion of reckless imprudence, but just weighing further on the side of in favor of, at the proper time, at the instance of the minority leader, including gross negligence, as he referred to, that exists in our existing laws. Particularly, it exists also in our medical malpractice law. So it's already included as a floor of establish or a standard of establishing accountabilities in the health sector. Thank you. Just for the record, Mr. President, and thank you to the gentleman.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Senator Risa.
Your Honor, with the indulgence of the minority leader, may we request a 2-minute health break, Mr. President? We've been going on 2 hours, 15
Yes,
minutes.
Mr. President,
Yeah.
before that, I just manifest that I have no more questions, so we will just submit our proposed amendments at the appropriate time, given the responses of the good sponsor, and before the next interpolator, we can have a bathroom break.
Thank you. Thank you very much to our learned minority leader, and we welcome his proposals at the proper time. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you to the
Mr.
minority leader.
Yes,
We have,
Mr. President, I move
yes,
for a
majority leader.
1-minute Senate break.
Yes, 1 minute Senate break. is resumed. Majority Leader. You are muted, Majority Leader.
I'm sorry, Mr. President. Mr. President, may we recognize our distinguished colleague from Cagayan de Oro, no other than Senator Aquilino Coco Pimentel III.
The gentleman from Cagayan de Oro, Senator Coco Pimentel, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Majority Leader. With the permission of our hardworking sponsor, if I can ask some clarificatory questions.
Of course, to our idol top-notcher, pride of Cagayan de Oro, along with the majority leader, Mr. President.
The Majority Leader is the pride of Northern Mindanao, Mr. President.
Both of you are the pride of Northern Mindanao.
And Albay. And Albay.
At any rate, Mr. President.
Less proud, Mr. President. I'm just kidding.
If I can start, Mr. President.
Yes, apologies, Your Honor.
Of course, an act which expedites the procurement and administration of vaccines against COVID-19 will always get this representation's support. No, but there are some details that I want to be clarified on. So let me start by asking if this measure is our chamber's reaction to the inputs that we got during the Committee of the Whole hearing on the national government's vaccination program.
To a certain extent, yes, Your Honor. But personally, I was not present at all the hearings. I think it tries to address some of the issues raised during the Committee of the Whole, but also to some of the newer issues like the, I'm not sure if the indemnity clause was an issue at the time during the COW or Committee of the Whole. And of course, the LGUs, since they have closed these supply agreements early this year with the vaccine makers, they're very much concerned. And I think a lot of the push comes from our local government units also, Your Honor. And of course, our Majority Leader is also championing the measure, Your Honor.
So may we know, Mr. Sponsor, what were the bottlenecks or obstacles or problems which were brought out during the Committee of the Whole hearing, which we are now addressing in this measure? If meron.
I'm trying to recall, Your Honor. As I said, I was not really present. But I think, if I may speak more generally, Mr. President, I think the problem of the indemnity is a special concern for the vaccine providers. I think the issue of exemption from the local government code and the auditing code is a very important provision for our local government units. The ability of private entities to purchase vaccines is also a very important concern for many of our citizens and institutions, Your Honor. And of course, there are the usual safety concerns. And of course, with many of our colleagues also filed bills for some of and we've included the provisions of those bills, like the vaccine passport, which may be a standard going forward, as well as the exemption from import duties, taxes, and fees. So that's a concern for senators like Senator Marcos, Senator Poe, Senator Cayetano, among others, Mr. President.
Yes, sir. So when the problem of procurement, if strictly following the procurement laws was brought up, the answer is the negotiated procurement, which is found under emergency cases, which is found under Section 3. And then when the down payment issue of local governments was probably raised, the answer is now found in paragraph 2 of Section 3, allowing for advance payment of not more than 50%. And then when the issue of taxes on COVID-19 vaccines was raised, the answer is now found in what section is that, sir?
Section 10, Your Honor. The Section 10, Your
So-
Honor, Mr.
So
President.
is that how we responded to the inputs that we got from the COW? That's how I would look at it, Mr. Sponsor.
Yeah, that's one way of looking at it, Your Honor. We responded to some of the issues, and these are various bills, so really we cannot claim authorship of this bill solely because there are so many inputs and bills that factored into it, and of course our various
Yes.
executive departments also made crucial interventions, Your Honor.
Yes, so I hope that those familiar with the COW hearings, with all of the important issues raised there, which are the bottlenecks or the obstacles, the hurdles of the national vaccination program, would make sure that this is, because this is our chance to answer these problems, to make sure that all of the important problems raised there should be answered by this bill.
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes.
It's an attempt to really streamline and accelerate the process.
If I may add,
Yes, sir.
Yes, Mr.
Senator
President.
Coco and distinguished sponsor, including the prioritization of our essential workers
Okay.
is also included in this particular measure.
That's correct, Your Honor.
In order
Yes,
for
yes.
us to open up our economy.
The
That's
flow
a
chart, the
good
flow
point.
chart of
That's a good point.
yes, it's there. But
Yes.
I will ask a question about that. Thank you for reminding me. But
Yes, thank you.
But Mr. Sponsor, during the break, during our online discussion during the break, may reklamo na this matter of the need for indemnification agreement being mentioned now as being required by the vaccine manufacturers and suppliers was not brought out during the committee of the whole hearing. Ano ba nangyari rito? Kailan pa nalaman ito at bakit hindi po na ilabas doon pa mismo sa COW hearings na sana?
I'm not quite certain, Your Honor, to be honest, if it was already brought out during the Committee on the Whole hearings, having not attended all of those hearings. I
Ang
attended
reklamo,
one.
ang reklamo hindi nga daw na-mention nung sa COW. So,
Yeah, definitely during the budget. I remember it was not mentioned. Otherwise, we would have put a fund for that, Your Honor.
pwede natin tanong, sir, tanong natin doon sa mga resource persons with you now who were resource persons in the COW, bakit hindi na-mention?
Your Honor.
During the Committee of the Whole. It was mentioned daw. Secretary Duque is mentioning that they mentioned it during the Committee of the Whole hearings, Your Honor, Mr. President.
Okay, so Senator Pangilinan wants to interject something.
Just
Yeah, I'm willing to waive a few minutes.
Yes, with the indulgence of the two gentlemen, Senator Pangilinan is recognized.
Thank you. Yes, we recall that the Secretary Duque mentioned something about indemnification during the Committee of the Whole hearings. But this was said not in the context of it being a prerequisite to signing any supply agreement with any of the vaccine makers. That wasn't clarified then. It was mentioned, it was suggested that perhaps there should be some sort of indemnification for possible adverse reactions or allergic reactions to the vaccine, but it was not at all mentioned that this is necessary before any supply agreement was to be entered into. In fact, they were saying that we will have the indicative deadline of signing the agreements will be, and the delivery and the vaccination will be Feb 20. Just for the record, Mr. President. I recall that, Mr. President.
With the permission of Senator Pimentel, Mr. President, just one question only.
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes.
Point on the indemnification. Isn't it a fact that if the board of directors of the PhilHealth were to pass a board resolution saying that they will have an indemnification program for those who may be adversely affected by the vaccine, wouldn't that suffice? In fact, you don't even need the law. Board resolution lang ng PhilHealth pasasagutin nila.
It would suffice, Your Honor. It would suffice, except for death or permanent disability, because PhilHealth covers hospitalization, Your Honor.
Yeah, ulitin ko lang. a board resolution including death and disability. Of course, it is in their charter.
That's a charter.
Yeah, the board can approve that.
Put that in the charter of PhilHealth. Death to cover death or permanent.
For this purpose,
The two resource persons here, Your Honor, are saying it's not covered by the charter of PhilHealth.
but nothing prevents the board from allowing that.
I think they are governed by the charter, Your Honor. So if that's the way they interpret the charter, then the board would not act in a way to overrule the charter, Your Honor.
I disagree, Mr. President. It talks about healthcare. Now, if there's an adverse reaction because of a vaccine, so sagot nila, pwede, through a board resolution lang.
Yes, yung pagka nagkasakit ho, pwede ho yun. Kasi under the PhilHealth Charter, talagang hospitalization is covered for I think all types of sickness. But the distinction they are drawing, Mr. President, is for death or permanent disability. Hindi daw yun usually kino-cover ng PhilHealth.
Okay, usually hindi. But this is a pandemic. And we're talking about a vaccine. And that's why you have a reserve fund. I just wanted to put that on record. Now, frankly, we may not need a law, but I don't mind passing a law since we're discussing it already. I'm just saying that if the executive wanted to act, and who is the chairman of PhilHealth? It is the DOH secretary. Members are the Department of Finance secretary, so on and so forth. It can be done. Kung gusto, pwedeng gawin. That's all I'm saying, Mr. President. So, again, thank you to the gentleman from Cagayan de Oro for allowing me to interject this point. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'm just relaying also what was relayed to me by our two resource persons.
Yes, Senator Recto. Yes, Senator Pimentel, you can proceed.
Thank you to Senator Recto. At any rate, I'm only pursuing a point he raised earlier.
Yes, Your Honor. Yes, Your Honor.
But because in the scenario, in a scenario like this, where there's a vaccination, if you look at the possible liabilities, I think this is what the so-called indemnification agreement, the so-called immunity from liability, and the indemnity fund for serious adverse effects and deaths. These are what they're trying to cover, because the possible points of liability would be, number one, the vaccine manufacturer supplier. Number two, those who are just implementing the mandated national vaccination program. And then number three, not in the sense of liability, but compensating those who will be adversely affected by availing of this national vaccination program. So those who will be adversely affected will be compensated by Section 9. Yun po yun, di ba? And then those who will be simply following orders, following the program, and implementing the program will be covered under Section 8, immunity from liability. So what is now missing, and what I have heard earlier, is that this is what the manufacturers are asking for, is their indemnity agreement. Sir, but ano po laman? What do they need from us? What is this? What are the contents? What should be the content of this indemnity agreement that COVAX and Pfizer, according to the earlier answer, are requiring before they can proceed with our contracts?
They are they will be held free from any liability from any SAE or serious adverse effect as a result of the vaccine, Your Honor. Yun po ang hinihingi nila at yun po ang sakop nung Section 9 natin.
Pasok ba sa Section 9 po yun? Sa pagdating po sa yung Section 9 po, pagkaintindi ko is any person inoculated in case of the death or medical treatment would be compensated. So that already satisfies the indemnification agreement. Yes. Being required by COVAX and Pfizer.
Covered by section 9. Covered na siya. Yes, it's covered by 8 and 9, sections 8 and 9. I was told by the DOF Undersecretary who is privy to these supply arrangements, Your Honor.
Now, Section 8, Mr. Sponsor, the last sentence, although there's a contractor, the word contractors is there, maybe it's a stretch to include the vaccine manufacturer. But if COVAX and Pfizer, the two facilities or establishments referred to earlier, are satisfied with sections 8 and 9, then that means this concern has been answered already, or is being answered already by our measure.
Your Honor, I have no objection if you want to include the manufacturer in section 8 to make it more specific. I don't think it can harm. I don't think it will harm our effort to procure vaccines. In fact, it may even help it, Your Honor.
Yes, Mr. President, the intention is actually the intention is actually to remove all of the obstacles or the reasons why the vaccines are not yet arriving in our country. Because, for example, COVAX, I think the majority leader during the break mentioned that some countries, example was Bangladesh, is already inoculating their citizens through the COVAX facility. So if the COVAX facility needs an indemnification agreement, that means Bangladesh already answered this requirement of COVAX. So I just want to make sure that we are answering this requirement so that we can also avail of COVAX just like the other countries, assuming that Bangladesh is inoculating under inoculating using vaccines provided by COVAX.
Yung sa Bangladesh daw ho, Mr. President, is Sinovac and AstraZeneca, I was told.
Yes, but is that those are the brands, Mr. Sponsor, Mr. President, but were those vaccine doses secured by Bangladesh through the COVAX facility, yung the WHO pooling of vaccines?
Yes. I'm not sure, Your Honor. Even the resource persons here are not sure if it's under the COVAX facility, Your Honor.
Okay, ang point lang, sir, is let us address to take advantage of COVAX. Supposed to be libre po yan. Hindi ka-clarify ko nga mamaya kung tama ba yun kasi may nabasa akong news report na nagpapabayad, may bayad din tayo na $80 million. So, to take advantage of COVAX, if the only reason is the lack of an indemnification agreement, do sections 8 and 9 already answer the requirement of COVAX so that that reason will now be eliminated. Hence, we can now expect our entitlement under the COVAX facility of X number of doses. Itatanong ko din po mamaya yung eksaktong numero.
Yes, it would meet the requirement for the COVAX for Pfizer. Because I think for AstraZeneca, they're not demanding the same type of indemnity provision, Your Honor.
Okay, sir. Okay, so if sections 8 and 9 already answer this need, then as written, so we should make sure that when we amend it, it will still continue to answer the indemnification agreement required by COVAX and Pfizer.
Yes, Your Honor.
Yeah. With the permission, I'm sorry, Mr. President. With the permission again of the gentleman.
Yes, Senator Recto, with the permission of the gentleman.
I'm sorry if I'm interfering, but again on the indemnification one last, because in the bill it doesn't even say how much are we gonna give a patient pag namatay or halimbawa permanent disability. There's nothing in the bill. Who will determine that? PhilHealth?
PhilHealth under bill, Your Honor.
So in case of death or permanent disability, who will determine that?
Yung PhilHealth ho, under the bill.
Under the bill. Okay.
Apo.
Okay. So, but it doesn't say that also in the bill, no? It just says that they will administer it.
Well, yes, I think it can be implied because as the main administrator, they will have to do it in case of death
so
or...
ergo, it is allowed.
It is allowed after we pass this, Your Honor. But I think their position is that without this, they would not be empowered to do it.
But nothing here talks about death or permanent disability. I was just following up.
Section 9 is specific, Your Honor. It says the COVID-19 National Vaccine Indemnity Fund, which shall be administered by PhilHealth, is hereby established to compensate any person inoculated through the COVID-19 vaccination program in case
Correct.
of death or for the medical treatment of any
Yeah.
SAEs, Your Honor.
Yeah, okay. So thank you for the clarification. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Honor.
So they will determine the amounts.
I would assume so, yes, Your Honor, under the implementing rules.
Maybe at the appropriate time, we could look at that again as well, no?
Yes, we're open to that, Your Honor.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Senator Recto.
So at least that is the reply of the sponsor. So it's clear that this matter of indemnification agreement has been answered by this measure. Can I
Yes, but
digress
again, I would like to repeat, Mr. President, I'm still open to whatever the gentleman might propose to better
Yes.
it.
Yeah, but if as written this already answers the requirement, we better be careful with our amendments to make sure that we do not change any concept in the amendment in the original. So
Yes, Your Honor.
can I digress a little, Mr. President, and ask about COVAX, because I asked this during the committee of the whole hearing, if we are going to pay for the doses we will be getting through COVAX. And the answer I got was that this is going to be free. But then I read a news report that we are going to pay $80+ million for our availment of the COVAX facility. So may we know what is the real situation with COVAX?
It comes out to Your Honor, you're correct your statements, and it's actually $76 million for 40 million doses. So it comes out to less than $2 per dose, Your Honor.
Why were we given a different answer during the COW hearing, sir? Secretary Galvez said it's free and then confirmed by the WHO Philippine representative. So ganun ba pabago-bago ang policy
I
pati
think it was
number?
a different situation then, Your Honor. And I was told kinapos ng pera itong Gavi, which is the entity funding the COVAX facility, Your Honor. So I think the answer was truthful at the time, but there is a change of underlying circumstances, Your Honor.
So okay, sir. So from 0 to $76 million. Okay, sir.
Well, I'm not sure what the. I think.
So,
Yeah. So yes, you're right. You're correct,
Sir.
Your Honor.
okay,
You're
sir.
correct,
Maybe because of the pandemic, the generosity was also, the level of generosity was also
Kinapos din, Your Honor.
overestimated at the beginning. So even the 20% nag-lower na, no? 15% na. Sino ba yung nagsabi kanina? Bumaba na to 15%.
Si Secretary Galvez and Secretary Duque were mentioning it.
15% of the population. Sige, sir. But for possible improvement, Mr. Sponsor, I've noticed that the flow chart of the priority listing mentioned by Senator Villanueva earlier seems to be worded differently. For example, page 3, line 12, if the procurement of the vaccine is funded by the national government, then the LGU shall comply with the science and evidence-based terms and conditions of deployment and prioritization provided by the NITAG. And then line 16, for LGU-funded vaccines, there is now a mention of frontline workers in health facilities, senior citizens, and indigent patients. And then pagdating po naman sa private entities, same page 3, beginning with line 30, ando naman yung prioritization, healthcare workers, senior citizens, economic frontliners, and essential workers. why are we not adopting a standard wording, sir, reflecting the priority, the listing of the priority? Because if it is a priority, then that list, the listing, the prioritization should not change. Whoever paid for the vaccine.
So why not?
Some of our colleagues wanted it spelled out, Your Honor, in the measure in black and white, and some of our colleagues also wanted to give some latitude in recognition of the local autonomy. And I know His Honor is the champion of local autonomy since his father is the father of the local government code. So I think we're trying to reconcile those imperatives, Your Honor.
Okay, I can see the rationale in the sponsor's response, but when it comes to procurement of vaccine by the national government, there is no such there's no need to list down the groups in order of priority. We just say that the prioritization is to be provided by the National Immunization Technical Advisory Group. That's on
There is a specific, I read it out earlier during the interpellation of the Senate President Pro Tempore, Senator Recto. They have already given 3 criteria, Your Honor, for vaccination. Criteria 1 is the priority groups. These are the healthcare workers, the senior citizens, the indigents, the military, the other frontline workers, and special population. Criteria 2 is the geographic location. This is based on, first, the COVID-19 burden of the disease, and the second, the LGU readiness to effectively and efficiently deploy vaccines. And criteria 3 was the sub-priority groups, which is based on exposure and mortality risk. So priority for healthcare workers for directly providing the care, for seniors in the highest age groups. So prioritization within the priority groups, Your Honor.
That's found in another document, Mr. President, right? Not in the measure.
I know, Your Honor. That's released by the NITAG, Your Honor. Yes, correct. You're correct. It's not in this document.
And that's how they will distribute the vaccines procured by the national government, siguro. But on page 3, line 12, this is now the directive to the LGU for the vaccines, I think, that they receive from the national government, spent for by the national government. So it's just general. They just comply with science, and then the prioritization provided by the NITAG. So
Opo, yun yung kakabasa ko lang po, Mr. President, na yun yung national prioritization. They must comply with that since the vaccine was funded by the national government.
sa pagtanggap nila, sir, pagtanggap po nila, Mr. President, ng vaccines funded by the national government, may kasamang yung papel na yan, yung listahan na yan. Dapat sundin nila.
Opo. Yes, Mr. President.
Sige, sir. Sige, sir. Just one last concern, Mr. President. Because Section 11, there's a vaccine passport program. So this section establishes the vaccine passport program. Nagulat nga po ako bakit. So there is another program being established under this measure. So what is this program? Hindi ba all we need is just when we are vaccinated, all we need is just a record of our vaccination. And since this requires a second dose, and we need to get the same, the second dose must be of the same brand of the first dose. So that's our record, so that we will not make a mistake. So, what is this vaccine passport program, sir, that we are also establishing under this measure?
It's just a record, as you mentioned. It is a record that the person was vaccinated and the circumstances of his vaccine, what was the manufacturer, what type of vaccine he received, the date, etc., and other specific circumstances. And this is a product of a bill filed by our colleagues, Senator Poe, Senator Cayetano, and Senator Revilla, and we adopted that provision, Your Honor, because the belief is that it will be necessary for our countrymen going forward, especially those who are working abroad, Your Honor. There must be an official certification from the country that they have been vaccinated, or a certification by an official institution tasked with that to be the repository of that information, Your Honor.
So are we anticipating that there will be an internationally recognized passport requirement, a vaccine passport requirement? Because there is none as of the moment, as far as I know.
Yes, I think that is the discussion. If you don't get that vaccine, then you may not be allowed to enter. It may be a requirement later on for entry into other countries, Your Honor. I'm just perhaps going ahead of ourselves because that's not strictly speaking what is provided for in the bill. But it is good also to know where other countries or how other countries are thinking, Your Honor, because if that lack of a certification from an official government body would hamstring our officials, then tsaka lang po tayo gagalaw. Pero mabuti na rin po, in a sense, we are ahead of the curve.
Yeah, but as of the moment, we have a so-called vaccine booklet, diba? When we get vaccinated, we can put the stamp there of the date, the brand, what kind of vaccine, the doctor who administered, etc. So
yes, I remember I had that, and I would bring it to my doctor every visit, Your Honor.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So if we are establishing another system here and we're calling it a passport system, that means we are anticipating that this will be needed in the future. Because if you look at page 5, line 25, it says that the vaccine passport shall take into account internationally recognized standards. Meron na bang ganon? For regular travel passports, but for vaccine passports, I don't think there is any. So are we the first country now trying to establish a vaccine passport program, Mr. President?
I think we may be the first one to call it a passport per se, but there are countries which issue other documents which serve the same purpose, Your Honor. Iceland issues vaccination certificates, which is to facilitate international travel and movement of people across borders. Israel has what it calls a green pass for those who receive 2 doses of the vaccine. And this is required for entry into certain public spaces. Denmark, I am told, has a document that also serves the purpose of a vaccine passport with similar information. This is again also for travel. Just some examples, Your Honor.
The rule, Mr. President, is that the COVID-19 vaccination is not mandatory. Hindi po ba? Hindi po, no? It's not mandatory, right?
That's correct, Your Honor. That's correct.
Yes, sir. Okay. I'm just worried that, if we now establish a vaccine passport program and the word passport actually connotes or affects mobility, if we are requiring a passport, COVID-19 vaccination passport for the mobility of our people, are we not indirectly telling them or pressuring them that COVID-19 vaccination is mandatory if you want to be a mobile person?
Hindi naman siguro, Your Honor. It's just really to certify that that person was vaccinated, and that certification carries with it all the attendant benefits, whether through law or through practice. And again, we're not tied to the name passport. If you want to call it something else in order to...
Yes.
We can call it a vaccine certificate or a vaccine card or something else to that effect, something
Mr.
similar, Your Honor.
Mr. President, I think which is automatic eh. Pag magpa-vaccine ka ngayon, talagang may vaccine booklet ka, or kung hindi mo dala, you will be issued some sort of a paper that you were vaccinated. My worry, Mr. President, is found on page 6, lines 10 to 17. Andun, sir, individuals who have completed COVID-19 immunization may be granted certain benefits or exemptions subject to guidelines issued by the IATF, which shall be clearly stated in the individual's vaccine passport, such as but not limited to A, B, C, D. Andun yung non-essential domestic travel, meron pang international travel. So it's all about mobility, sir. There is access to business establishments allowed to operate based on IATF guidelines. So by using these regulations, the people might get the feeling that there is no choice. There is no more choice except to get vaccinated because, number one, we cannot probably move around. There's no more non-essential domestic travel. Yung international travel, of course, subject to the rules of receiving at the destination point. Wala tayong but wala tayong control over that. But the rules on whether you will be allowed to leave your country or not, may control tayo dyan, and we must be fair between vaccinated and non-vaccinated people or those with passports. So this is my worry, Mr. President, that if we now give these benefits or exemptions and highlight them connected with the vaccine passport po yan, therefore that's connected with the vaccination, in effect, we are really saying that, if you want to live life normally in a modern society, then this COVID-19 vaccination is mandatory. Hindi po ba ganun ang resulta, Mr. President?
I see the point of the gentleman from Cagayan de Oro, Your Honor, but if you read the measure, I don't think there's anything which really legally compels persons to obtain vaccination and as a consequence the vaccine passport. But perhaps that's the way of incentivizing people. That's the way I see it. It's not really a compulsion, but more of a incentive in a sense, because then you have less restrictions on your person, Mr.
Yes,
President.
sir. Yes, sir. But for example, B, non-essential domestic travel, and letter D, access to business establishments. What if they now adopt that as a universal rule? What if pharmacies adopt this as a universal rule? Paano po yan? Ano po mangyayari? So I mean, the danger is there, and I may be exaggerating, but the danger is there because we are highlighting the need for a vaccine passport. Okay, there is a need for a vaccine. When you get vaccinated, that is recorded with a paper document and digitally. It's transmitted to a national database. But the need to have a vaccine passport with the following benefits might this representation feels that gives the impression that sooner or later it might become mandatory. At any rate, I don't know the reaction to. I've heard the reaction of the sponsor, but I hope he sees the danger, especially when subparagraph D, access to business establishment, non-essential domestic travel. So
You're saying it's a backdoor to compelling people to vaccinate, in a sense. Is that your point, Your Honor?
because yes, sir, I get the impression that this can be interpreted to the extent that if you have no COVID-19 vaccine passport, you cannot engage in non-essential domestic travel, and your access to business establishments will be limited depending on whether the business establishment will make this as a policy. That show your vaccine passport before entry. And what if let's say a majority or 100% of business establishments adopt this as a policy? Paano na po yung walang vaccination dahil wala siyang yung walang vaccination kasi wala siyang COVID passport. And it's not mandatory. And it is not mandatory.
A vaccinated intermediary, Mr. President. It will spawn a cottage industry of vaccine brokers, Mr. President. But again, I must say that on line 10 of the same provision we are discussing, it only provides for permissive language, Your Honor. It only says that individuals who have completed COVID-19 immunization may be granted certain benefits or exemptions. So it's not set in stone. And these are, I think, additional inducements, as I said earlier, for people to be vaccinated. And if they still choose not to be vaccinated, that there's nothing in the law which would compel them to do so.
Yes, Mr. President, maybe an information drive can promote the vaccination program, maybe subject to the priority listing, high-profile personalities being vaccinated, subject, of course, to the priority listing, can also help encourage people to get vaccinated.
Yes, Your Honor. I think that's very important. And according to Secretary Duque, they're doing that, and they want to get the majority leader as their model
Yes, sir.
for vaccination, Your Honor.
Kasi I think these are better approaches rather than putting the foundation for possible discriminatory practices in the future. Possible po, possible kasi just imagine society where 100% of the business establishments will now require the showing of the vaccine passport before you are allowed entry or to allowed to avail their services. So, nagkaroon na po ng discrimination sa tingin ko po. Well, tapos sir, and then
We understand your concerns, Your Honor.
Mr. President, on that matter, may I...
Yes,
Provision.
with the indulgence of Senator Pimentel.
Yes, Senator Pia is the author
We'll
of
give
the
the
bill, so
floor
I
to,
think she can expand on it.
Yes, Senator Pia Cayetano is recognized.
And for the record, I just had to leave. I have 2 international conferences tonight, so I have to prepare. But I've been listening, and I just want to spread into the record the basis for that bill. No, I know Senator Angara has already mentioned this, but in addition, historically, this is actually the age-long debate between public health and private rights. And Senator Tolentino might be in the best position if he's willing to elaborate, because he did some extensive research that in the early days, they even prevented in the US, where I think the US was one of the first countries to develop vaccines, 100 more than 200 years ago. And they even had a campaign that if the children were not vaccinated, they cannot go to school. And of course, those anti-vaxxers, protested against this. But on the other hand, it's the age-old debate between public health and private interest. So at some point, and that's why I leave it up to the experts to determine, there may be reason to say, yes, you will be discriminated if you will be in certain places that are highly transmissible, like maybe movie houses will be open to the public, but then for those who refuse to get vaccinated, they cannot go to the movie house. There are choices that people may have to face. I'm not dictating what it is because I'm not the expert. I'm simply saying that these are tough policy decisions that we need to lay the groundwork or the foundation for, so that we can allow our experts to make the appropriate decisions. Because at some point, this herd immunity will never happen if people will make their decisions on their own. And we have enough Supreme Court cases to say that there are times where you have to make that decision in favor of public health. So just for the record, Mr. President, thank you.
Thank you very much to our
Thank you.
colleague, former chairperson of Health, for explaining it very well. Thank you.
thank
And
you.
if I may, with the indulgence of Senator Coco, I share the sentiments of Senator Coco Pimentel. I have really some reservations, Mr. Distinguished colleague, about this particular section. I mean, section 11 in page 6, line 10, because somehow we might be perceived as forcing the vaccination program to our people. And with regard to the word passport, I share the sentiments of Senator Coco Pimentel that when you talk about passport, it's mobility. Kaya this might have some misconception in the end. So perhaps in the latter part of this debate, or in the period of amendments, perhaps our bar top notcher, Senator Coco Pimentel, would be able to look for the right wording, Mr. Distinguished colleague, distinguished sponsor. Thank
Yes,
you.
yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. And as the sponsor, we're open to any suggestions from our colleagues, Mr. President.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you,
But
Senator Coco.
as far as I know, as of the moment, when a person gets vaccinated, it's really recorded, no. So
Yes.
the improvement here is there will be a digital recording and there will be a national database, mga ganon. I mean, there's really improvement, but I hope that the passport will not in any way be made a requirement, even indirectly, which will affect the mobility of those who have chosen not to get vaccinated, because the policy is it's not mandatory. So basta I think ganun na lang siguro, we can promote vaccination. Ulitin ko yung sinabi ko kanina, there are other ways, there are better ways to promote the vaccination program other than using a passport, vaccination passport to control the mobility of people. So tapos I'm also because of the importance that we have given under this measure to the vaccine passport, I'm just worried about Section 12, sir, the penalties and penalties about this passport. Kasi nga sa passport na we are giving too much importance on the COVID-19 vaccine passport. So look at the penalties now, up to 10 years imprisonment, only because of this passport, which should be just a record of the vaccine administered to a person out of his own volition for his benefit. Yun yung point, di ba? Nagpa-vaccine talaga yung tao because he wants to be protected. At any rate, Mr. President, I think we are the only country requiring face mask and face shield in public. Tama po ba yun, Mr. President? Can we ask the IATF? Tayo lang yata only country mask and the shield in public.
Many countries now. Face shield, I think we are one of the few countries.
Sa face shield, we are one of the few, I am told, Mr. President. Pero sa face mask, marami daw ang require nito.
Yes, I'm talking about the combination. So one of the few. So, di ba, the earlier pronouncements were that if you wear a face mask, the possibility of transmission is 85% lower, and if you combine the mask with the shield, the possibility or probability of transmission is even lower, up to 95%. So meron na tayong ganyan. Meron pa tayong vaccine which is optional. So I think we have taken all the necessary precautions. Samahan na lang po ng the use of an effective, efficient public information campaign to promote the program of the government. So at any rate, Mr. President, I am in full support of this measure, which will expedite the procurement and administration. Kasi yun yata ang basic tanong ngayon, bakit wala pa ang vaccine available for those who want to be vaccinated. So I will end here, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Sponsor, for your patience. Thank you, my dear colleagues.
Thank you to our distinguished colleague, learned in the law, for his contributions, Your Honor.
Thank you, Senator Coco Pimentel. And let me just point out also, I think, for example, what happened in Boracay, where they found out that they are using a fake
Vaccine.
PCR results.
That's right.
And then, and I think this is a challenge for us legislators to look into it, because I can see the importance of this particular section in Section 12, but at the same time, also commiserate with these sentiments of Senator Coco Pimentel. Thank you, Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Those in line to ask questions is Senator Lacson, the next in line. Is he still around, Mr. President?
I think he stepped out, but he might probably come back. But the next in line...
After Senator Lacson is Senator Tolentino, Senator Kiko Pangilinan, and Senator Gordon on the list, Mr. President. So we can recognize, if Senator Lacson is not there, Mr. President, we can recognize Senator Tol Tolentino if he's available.
The gentleman from Cavite, Senator Francis Tolentino, is recognized.
He's taken over your rostrum, Majority Leader, by the way. I'd like to tell
He's
the public.
taking over your rostrum.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. President, because
It's all right. It's all right, gentlemen. It's
I
okay.
think he's going to make some grand pronouncements, Mr.
No,
President.
Mr. President,
We are all of equal footing.
observe the social distancing rule because the sponsor is just 2 feet away from me, from my table.
To do the special dance.
Mr. President, this will
During the
be
2016 election, 2013 election.
this will be brief, short, and happy, Mr. President, for the
Thank you,
convenience
Your
of
Honor.
the
Please
sponsor.
proceed.
I agree with Mr. President with the line of questioning of Senator Pimentel a while ago. Indeed, the last compulsory vaccination efforts conducted was during the smallpox epidemic during the 1800s. It was compulsory. It almost changed the course of the Civil War in the United States, Mr. President. And it led to the defeat of several troops of Napoleon Bonaparte, smallpox. But it was compulsory. Mr. President, if you're familiar with this, Dr. Duque is here, if you're familiar with the strange case of Typhoid Mary, that was during the 1900s. That was the time when vaccination was made voluntary. What happened to Typhoid Mary, Mary Malion, was that he was found to be an asymptomatic carrier of typhoid fever, the fecal bacteria. He was incarcerated in a hospital in I think near the Bronx in New York for 23 years until she died because she was a carrier. But the entire state was not compulsorily vaccinated. So the notion of making this compulsory with the provision of the passport might run afoul with some constitutional requirements relative to freedom to travel, relative to personal right to privacy, among others. But I have no quarrels with that. I'm just following up the line of questioning of Senator Pimentel. For the record, is the COVID-19 vaccination, is it going to be compulsory?
No, Your Honor.
No. So it is not required, even if later on, as envisioned by the World Health Organization, they will have a vaccination program for children. Because insofar as polio and other diseases that are meant to be cured, it is compulsory vaccination.
No, even to this day, Your Honor, vaccination for children is not compulsory.
Measles.
It's not compulsory, Your Honor.
So what do we do in schools?
Well, it's offered, but I think they have the right to refuse. It's my impression, Your Honor.
Because as gleaned from the questioning of Senator Pimentel, there might be some discriminatory effects insofar as not possessing that passport. You might not be allowed to enter a restaurant, a resort. So it might develop into a stigma, so to speak, if you're not vaccinated. Are we envisioning that?
Well, the stigma, that's something imposed by society, Your Honor. So I cannot predict that. You know, it's something that can exist whether with or without the law, Your Honor.
So I still recall, ano ba sa English yung si Dr. Duque siguro nakakaalam nito, yung beke, yung lumalaki yung
mumps.
Yung mumps.
Did you get mumps, Your Honor, when you were young?
I think during my early school days, kahit sa elementary school, mga bata yan eh. It progresses into such a way that some of your nodes would restrict your breathing and eventually lead to asphyxiation or death. And then, yung iba nilalagyan ng yung kulay violet dito. Anong tawag doon? Si Senator Bato, alam yun eh. Anyel sa Bisaya. Parang Jobos yun sa Tagalog.
Gentian blue is what they are saying.
Yes.
Your Honor.
So, it's
Hindi na namin naabutan ni Senator Villanueva.
Napanganak nun. kulay violet yun, parang Lakers. So it would appear that contracting that disease, contracting that bigger lump in your neck for a child is a sort of a stigma, whether you like it or not.
Yes, Your Honor. But again, as I mentioned, it's not dependent on the law. It's dependent on what society believes and practices.
So again, possession or non-possession of a certificate, whether fraudulently made or a real certificate, might pose some administrative problems later on. And I agree with the acting chair that it should be prevented. But for my real questions, Mr. President, I asked this during the Committee of the Whole hearing.
Warm up lang pala yun, Your
Warm
Honor.
up lang po. Committee
Ito na yung totoong.
Committee of the Whole hearing.
Senator Bato is very amused.
Yes, because Mr. President.
Because you said it will be short, Your Honor.
But this will be happy, Mr. President. I am always perplexed with statements coming from the World Health Organization.
Opo.
I'm confused. As readers today of our broadsheets would likewise be confused. Today's newspaper headline, again, the notion, which I am still trying to clarify, I do hope a representative of the World Health Organization would be here, as to the notion of the emergency use list, EUL. Papers today would appear that in the papers today, it would appear that the emergency use list is a procedure developed by the World Health Organization to rank, to authorize vaccine manufacturers insofar as their safety and efficacy is concerned. How would you compare this with our existing EUA? Dr. Domingo is seated behind you.
I'll have to consult, Your Honor. Halos parehas lang ho, Your Honor. We follow daw the standards of the WHO for EUL, Your Honor.
But Mr. President, what makes me more confused is that the proposed bill, and I'm looking at the precise section. This is section 7 on line 18 to 19. And I quote, notwithstanding any law to the contrary, that health HTAC shall have the authority to make recommendations to the DOH and PhilHealth on COVID-19 vaccines based on preliminary data from phase 3 clinical trials and World Health Organization recommendations. So we are now, the draftsmen of this bill, we are now recognizing implicitly, directly, the authority of the World Health Organization to make their own listing. So my question is this, Mr. President, what is the effect of a vaccine purchased by the government, purchased by the LGU, without being included in the EUL? Because as of now, Mr. President, I think I have a slide, one slide presentation here. Because, Mr. President, as of today, maliit lang yung slide. Can you enlarge that? As of today, there are only 2 EUL-approved vaccines, Pfizer and AstraZeneca. My question, Mr. President, is what will now happen to the vaccines not yet listed by the World Health Organization as part of their EUL, wherein the LGUs have already made down payments, signed contracts, among others?
As long as the FDA has issued the EUA, it is a valid agreement, Your Honor, and they will be allowed to buy it.
So this would now be inconsistent with Section 7, wherein we highlighted the importance of World Health Organization recommendation. Mr. President, I would like to assume, Mr. President, and correct me, I'm not a member of the medical profession that in the hierarchy of medical science, World Health Organization is on top. Comes next would be Regional Health Organization, and then the country or state health organizations. And that would include our local FDA. Mr. President, my notion here is that bakit hindi natin ang gawin, ayun na lamang approve ng World Health Organization ang ating isalang doon sa emergency use authorization para na sa ganon, wala tayong problema. Di ba? Tanong ko lang yon. Nandito po sa screen, Mr. President, are more than 12, can you enlarge that? More than 12, 15, can you go to the first slide? 15 vaccine manufacturers with EUL applications. Nakalista na po sila, so inapprove na si Pfizer, sumunod na po si AstraZeneca, and I cannot see it from this distance, but I can probably see the logo of Johnson & Johnson's. I see Moderna, I see Sinovac, and a lot of other vaccine manufacturers. So
I cannot read anything, Your Honor. So I apologize, but go ahead.
for the record, the committee sponsor will be given a copy of the
Thank you.
printed listing coming
Including the
Presiding officer.
presiding officer, please.
this document, Mr. President,
Maybe it's out of order, Your Honor. No, I'm just kidding.
Mr. President, this document came from the World Health Organization, and it's document dated February 16, 2021, just yesterday. This is really relevant, Mr. President, the status of COVID-19 vaccine. So, Mr. President, and you have check marks there. Ang tanong ko po rito, ang bibilhin natin, kahit walang EUL approval ng World Health Organization, as long as there is an emergency use authorization of our own local FDA, okay na po yan.
Yes, Your Honor.
But isn't it a fact, Mr. President, before, and we relate now this with the COVAX Gavi facility, before the COVAX would release vaccines to several countries, it has to have an EUL imprimatur from the World Health Organization.
Because it's WHO initiative. Yes, that's true, Your Honor.
So paano na po ito? Kung bibili yung iba nating mga gobernador, nakikinig yung executive director ng ULAP, Governors League, na wala pang EUL, bottom line, mahalaga ba ho yung EUL?
Mahalaga po. In fact, that's why we adopt it as a basis for issuing the EUA for our local FDA. But at the same time, we don't, Philippine law does not limit us to abide just by the EUL, meaning in the absence of the EUL, we are bound to wait for that, Your Honor. And I've been told by Director Domingo here that not all vaccine manufacturers apply for the EUL with the WHO.
I hope this, with all due respect, I hope the committee secretariat can be provided a copy of my WHO listing ASAP. Mr. President, the reason why I'm trying to dig into this EUL thing is there might probably be a chance if there is a good crafty insurance lawyer who might go for that indemnification provision would probably allege that because of your non-EUL, we can claim because of the adverse effects, because you proceeded without the World Health Organization approval. That's why my client now got these adverse effects, and he's now just numb on her left shoulder, but probably would be paralyzed forever. Can't that happen speculatively to the distinguished member of the bar from Aurora?
We're lucky that crafty insurance lawyer is now a senator, Mr. President.
I am not an insurance lawyer.
He would never do something like that.
I am not an insurance lawyer, Mr. President. I am only uninsured. Can't we? I hope the record will show that the sponsor was given a copy of the
Yes, Your Honor. I have it
listing
here
as
in
well
front
as
of me.
the Secretary of Health. So that is my parliamentary dilemma here. that if we disassociate ourselves with the World Health Organization at this moment, we might not be in sync with what is happening globally. Tama po ba yun? Or ganito po, Mr. President, hindi ba natin pwedeng isama yung EUL para naka-interlink po tayo sa World Health Organization?
Yeah, Your Honor, there's no intention to dissociate from the WHO, and we are told it's just that WHO takes quite some time to issue their EUL.
So it would appear, Mr. Chair, that from this listing dated yesterday, next in rank would be, if I can move closer, I think it's SK something. It's a product coming from Korea. Next would be the Serum Institute of India. And next would be Sinopharm. So these are all the manufacturers who applied for an EUL. And from the document I gathered from the World Health Organization, it appears that the issuance of the EUL would be connected with the latest variants, not just the B117 of the UK, but all other evolving variants, Mr. President. So that's why I'm saying that we should not lose touch with what is happening within the World Health Organization as part of this global response, although we are addressing it locally. Am I correct in that assumption?
You are 100% correct, and we appreciate your sharing this information with us. And again, there's no move to dissociate, Your Honor, but I think the aim is to have maximum freedom in the choices available to the country, Your Honor.
So perhaps in the period of amendments after the World Health Organization's mention here, we can mention EUL, if that would be a proper proposition. Because you mentioned, it's part of the bill as submitted, Section 7.
We will need to discuss that with the FDA and the DOH, Your Honor. It's a technical matter that is quite frankly beyond the competence of this representation, Your Honor.
Thank you for being candid, Mr. President. My last question, as promised, Mr. President, I refer to Section 10. Section 10 refers to exemption from import duties, taxes, and other fees for procurement, deployment, and administration of COVID-19 vaccines. If you will recall, Mr. President, during the Committee of the Whole hearings, where I likewise participated, I raised the, Secretary Galvez is no longer here, I raised the donation coming from China, which was affirmed by the Chinese ambassador to the Philippines, Wang Xilian. This is a report dated January 18 that they're donating 500,000 COVID-19 vaccines to the Philippines. Can we affirm that as part of this interpellation?
It's actually 600,000, I've been informed.
600,000.
And end of February arriving, Your Honor.
So I stand corrected. So this is now the 600,000 Sinopharm or Sinovac?
Sinovac, Your Honor.
Is there a difference between Sinopharm and Clover?
Iba pa rin yung dalawa.
Iba pa rin
Iba pa
yun.
yung
So
dalawa.
this is getting more confusing. But be that as it may, there is the Chinese ambassador's confirmation, as reaffirmed by the good sponsor, probably confirmed with the presence of the Secretary of Health here, that there is going to be a donation. And in Section 10, Your Honor, there is a provision on line 19. After the word tax, excise tax, there is a donor's tax. And apparently, the wisdom behind this is that there is now a liberality on the part of the government to exempt from import taxes, duties, and other fees vaccines coming from outside sources, from value-added tax, custom duties, excise tax, and donors tax. And my curiosity, Mr. Chair, Mr. President, led me to refer back to Section 7. Section 7, or Section 6, Section 6 should be read together with Section 10. Because Section 6 refers to the transparency and accountability in COVID-19 vaccine procurement. The national government, and I quote, this is line 2 of Section 6, the national government as well as local government units may only procure COVID-19 vaccines that are registered with the Philippine FDA. And procure, Mr. President, would connote the necessary taxes if you are an ordinary buyer, Mr. President. So you would fall now in the following category of fees, duties, customs duties, value-added tax. Am I correct, Mr. Sponsor?
I'm trying to follow your line of thinking, Your Honor.
We now read together Section 6 with
Yes.
Section 7, with
Yes, Your
Section
Honor.
10.
Yes, certainly,
So
Your Honor.
if you're a manufacturer, you sent or a buyer, you purchased an X amount volume bulk of vaccines, for instance, from AstraZeneca, as the private sector is doing, you'll be exempt from customs duties, value-added taxes. Am I correct?
That's correct, Your Honor.
Okay. So if we expand the notion here of the other tax mentioned in Section 10, the donor's tax, plus the confirmation I got from the Secretary of Health and from Your Honor that the Chinese government already donated 600,000 COVID-19 vaccines to the Philippines. Am I correct to say that this donation will be free of the donor's tax, which is, I think, 6%?
Well, there is a period provided here, Your Honor, beginning January 1, 2021.
Yes.
So I don't really know when the donation
Yes.
was made. But if it was made within the
I think, yes,
then it
January
would be
18.
exempt, Your Honor. Yeah.
Yes. So what about future donations? Donations coming from India?
Yes, Your Honor. As long as it's within the period, there's a period of January 1 of this year to December 31, 2023. So long as it's covered by that period and the transaction is covered by that period, then it would be exempt from donor's tax and all the other enumerated duties and taxes, Your Honor.
That's now very clear to this representation. But we are now talking of the Chinese government or the Indian government donating to the Philippine government through the Department of Health. Speculatively, perhaps in the near future, if the Taiwanese government or the Chinese government or the Indian government donates a bulk of vaccines to the government of the city of Manila, will it be exempt likewise from donor's tax?
Yes, Your Honor, because the word is by the government or any of its political subdivisions and by private entities. So I think it's wide enough to cover that. But we can insert language if you wish to
Yes.
make it clearer. We're open to that, Your Honor.
I thank the good sponsor for that. And if, for instance, a sister city of Quezon City with an excess volume of vaccines, with a sister municipality, a fifth-class municipality, would perhaps donate 1,000 vaccines to that fifth-class municipality, would it be exempt from the donor's tax?
Yes, it would be, Your Honor, because that's the intention to encourage the donation
So
by
it's now
exempting it, Your Honor.
So it's now an arrangement not coming from outside the country, but within the Philippines.
Yes, Your
within-
Honor.
So
Because that
exempt-
would be normally a taxable transaction, but with this provision, it should not be taxable in order to encourage the donation precisely.
What about, Your Honor, what about a sister company of a company covered under the private sector provision? A sister company, for instance, of a big corporation, San Miguel, would donate to Magnolia, excess vaccines for purposes of their books. Would it be exempt?
I would think so, Your Honor.
And a big company, Your Honor, donating to a fifth-class municipality, hosting a warehouse of San Miguel, would that be exempt?
Likewise exempt, Your Honor.
The purpose of my line of questioning, and I thank the good sponsor for his tolerance, is that probably in section 6, we might as well include the local government's ability to receive donations from whatever source. Because as it appears now, they are only mentioned here when they procure. But if we apply section 10, when we invoke the donor's tax, they're not yet there. They are there, almost there, not yet there. So we might as well, during the period of amendments, if the good sponsor would allow, modesty aside from procurement, accept donations.
Yes, Your Honor, we're with him 100% on that, and
that's,
we're willing to accept anything to clarify the intention, Your Honor.
And that's liberality, especially for big religious organizations.
Yes, Your Honor. Yes, Your Honor.
Hosting senior citizens. I have no further questions, Mr. President. I think I was enlightened by the responses made by the good gentleman, and I fully support this bill. I just raised those questions in order to clarify and strengthen the bill. Maraming salamat po, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you to our learned senator from Cavite. And I thank God that his interpellation was indeed short as promised, Your Honor.
Yes, thank you to the distinguished gentleman from Cavite, who is very passionate, especially every time the Washington Wizards loses. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, Mr.
Majority
President,
Leader, may we ask for a 1-minute suspension, again for a health break, Mr. President? Okay, go ahead, Your Honor.
yes, Mr. President. Well, we were supposed to, I believe Senator Kiko Pangilinan was supposed to be one of the next interpellators, but I believe he will just ask on Monday, due to the lateness of the hour.
Together with Senator Lacson, yes.
Together, yes, it will be on the list, Mr. President, for Monday to place this on record. On Monday, we will start the interpellations with Senator Lacson, after which will be Senator Kiko Pangilinan, and then Senator Gordon, Mr. President. Hopefully, I'm appealing to my colleagues, we can close the period of interpellations and open the period of amendments on Monday, after which we can proceed hopefully on second reading approval. So for our colleagues who wish to propound the amendments, if they can be ready by Monday, Mr. President, for the record. My appeal, it's an appeal.
Leader, perhaps
Yes.
our colleagues who are interested to raise questions upon the request of our distinguished sponsor, if they can forward the general concept of their questions so that they'll be able to prepare for their questions.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank
that would be ideal,
Presiding
Mr.
officer.
President.
Thank
That would be ideal.
Yeah.
Yes, because
We
again,
appeal
for
to
time,
the three remaining senators who would ask questions. Thank you, Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I'd like to apologize. I don't, because of the lateness of the hour, I believe the presiding officer also has to leave for another occasion. So,
We are
Mr.
still
President.
here, Majority Leader. There's additional reference of business, I believe, Majority Leader.
Yeah. Before we take up the reference of business and adjournment of session, I'd like to apologize to our colleagues who are waiting intently on the other measures. But before we do that, I move to suspend consideration of Senate Bill number 2057. I so move, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? The chair hears none. The motion of the Majority Leader is carried.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the additional reference of business.
Reference of business.
Additional reference of business, bills on first reading, Senate number 2058, an act granting Philippine citizenship to Angel Kwame, introduced by Senator Gordon.
Referred to the Committee on Justice and Human Rights.
Senate number 2059, an act granting the Highland Broadcasting Network Corporation a franchise to construct, install, establish, operate, and maintain radio and television broadcasting stations in Mindanao, introduced by Senator Zubiri.
Referred to the Committee on Rules. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, before we adjourn again, I'd like to apologize to our colleagues, particularly Senators Bato de la Rosa, who I believe The Bureau of Fire is also intently waiting on the sidelines. I think this was their second swab. So I'm sorry that they might have to swab again on Monday. But I suggest to the Senator Bato de la Rosa,
Overswab na.
yeah, nakailang swab na po yung ilong nila, Mr. President. But I would suggest that they could use the services of the Philippine Red Cross with the saliva PCR test. Mabilis lang po yan. They can go in the morning. They will get the result by lunchtime and wala na pong swab na kailangan.
And Majority
I
Leader,
apologize, Senator
perhaps
Bato.
we should also put into the records the patients of our friends from the local government units from Bulacan, from Caloocan, etc.
Yes, all the local government units that are there in support of this measure, and of course the members of the cabinet and the executive. Also, I'd like to apologize to Tita Cynthia. Of course, she was waiting in line for her cacao bill, and as well as Senator Richard Gordon for his judicial marshals and Senator Grace Poe for her bill, as well as the bills of Senator Francis Tol Tolentino on the local government amendments on the creation of provinces and new districts. My apologies.
And those who
my
are
apologies
physically
to them.
present up to this time. Majority
Yes,
Leader.
Mr. President. Unfortunately, I did not realize how excited our colleagues are on this measure. Obviously, it's a very important measure. And lest we be accused of delaying this any further, I had to prioritize this, Mr. President, so we'll not be blamed by the public on delaying this measure. But we'd like to assure our resource persons and the sponsor that we will take this up again first hour Monday, and that the agenda today will also be mirrored for Monday. It will be the same agenda, and if we can finish the vaccine procurement bill on Monday early, we can take up the other bills as well, Mr. President, on the line that on the rack that it is listed now on the agenda.
Just to put on record, Senator Angara is talking, but he's not aware that his microphone is off.
I just wanted to convey my thanks to the Majority Leader and to the presiding officer, but not to Senator Tolentino, who asked a lot of questions, Mr. President.
Kaya hindi na take up yung kanyang bills, mahaba yung interpolation pa niya. Anyway, Mr. President, just keeping matters before we adjourn. Mr. President, we're in receipt of a communication letter from Senator Aquilino Coco Pimentel III that he created a subcommittee in the Committee of Trade, Commerce, and Entrepreneurship to tackle Senate Bill number 1951, or an act regulating the importation, manufacture, sale, packaging, distribution, use, and communication of vapor products and heated tobacco products. This comes from our dear colleague, Senator Pimentel.
Yes, the manifestation of the distinguished gentleman from Cagayan de Oro is noted.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is today. We also would like to transfer from the Committee on the Rules to the Committee on Justice and Human Rights the following Senate bills. The Senate Bill number 1391, Philippine citizenship to Buenvenido Marañon Morejon, as well as granting Philippine citizenship to Angel Owame. This is Senate Bill number 1892. I so move, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? Chair hears none. The motion is carried. Just to put on record that this representation, together with Senator Angara, we're both very supportive of this citizenship.
I believe they're athletes, Mr. President, in our Philippine team. Yes.
For our
Kwame
basketball
citizenship,
team.
Mr. President?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Very, very good athletes. Mr. President, I also move to transfer from the Committee on Rules to the following measures to the Committee on Banks, Financial Institutions, Currencies, and as the primary committee, and to the Committee on Government, Corporations, and Public Enterprises as the secondary committee. This is Senate Bill number 2048, Senate Bill number 2003, Senate Bill number 1646, and House Bill number 7749. I so move, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? Chair hears none. So transferred.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. With that, there being no other matters for the evening, I move that we adjourn session until 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Monday, February 22, 2021. I so move.
Is there any objection? There being none, the session is adjourned until 3 o'clock in the afternoon of Monday, February 22, 2021.
Maraming salamat
Happy
po.
birthday,
Bye-bye.
Risa.